We back. I said I'd be back Monday. I lied. But here we are. I've been actually craving PoE2 so much, I tried to accommodate playing it while away by streaming a connection to my gaming PC over NordVPN mesh network. For a game that requires millisecond response time to dodge an attack, it's been an uphill battle. But we went from level 20 to level 34. And the only saving grace is that if I took an especially bad hit, it's a chronomancer. So I was able to snap back in time, replenish my health and shield. But I don't prefer it. No one would enjoy this experience. But it was doable. It was something. But yeah. And I've been doing some research about things that I could do with either the Pathfinder or the Deadeye, which could be fun. But big time patch notes discussion coming out today. GGG is streaming it, and then Darth Microtransaction is having Tavern talk with Gazzy afterwards with the two directors. So that we're going to be at the very least listening to, if not just directly watching on stream. Because, I mean, I think that's their whole point, is they want people to stream it, to get the word out, see the reactions of the people. So, that's the plan this evening. Meanwhile, I got stuck at the final Act 2 boss. And yeah, I mean, obviously with all the different attacks that he has and how low my damage is, there was no getting past this guy. I wonder if I could do it now that I'm not experiencing lag, but the damage is so abysmal, I have to slowly make my way through each phase, dodging his sequence of attacks many times. Oh yeah, I moved buttons around. I was using sparks. But yeah, this is not great. Where I left it last, I was trying to really enhance the fire and lightning damage as best I could. I mean, obviously there's some energy shield going on as well, but I don't know, we could try it. Let's see how we do. I'm back already. I said Monday to be safe, because I wasn't sure which train we were taking, how I was going to feel when I got home. Maybe I wanted to take the evening off. But now the update is coming out. They're streaming the things that are coming with 0.1.1. So obviously, I'm here. I want to see what's up. Might as well stream it. Might as well get some game time in. What else am I going to do with my evening? Yeah. Nice to be back. This is going to suck.
The Sigma of the Artura. Bow before your king.
The Medicae do not bow to pigs. We skin them.
The era of the Farragut is now!
I had to read a boss guide on how to defeat this guy. Not because he's particularly hard, but I needed to remember all the possible moves he does. And whenever I... Why have you got a sore arse? Huh? What happened to my arse? But yeah, this damage is really bad. And the spears this guy uses in the first sequence are so punishing And I learned that if you just hug him and run in a circle, you can dodge his close range lightning bolt and he won't use spears. Oh god. You just ring around the posy. I was minding my own business on PoE and it said Dapper. Oh.
What is ours?
Good one.
Wall of flame.
I mean, my arse is sore trying to fucking beat this guy. I think I've stretched myself too thin with the stuff I'm trying to do. There's so many different ways that I'd like to go with this character. And to be honest, the only reason I'm building it is because I want to have a character that can farm for like materials. And like the Spark build is really good. But the update that we're going to be watching in about an hour is probably going to tell us that we can't do Spark Mage anymore? Question mark? The character I'm playing it has not been nerfed and it should have been. Yeah, maybe they're not paying attention to everything. Spark has been nerfed already? Oh. Well, it still feels quite strong even with the nerf. So, yeah, because I kind of like tried my best with the level I'm at to put points into it, and I still felt like I was doing quite a bit of damage. This is, excuse my French, fucking terrible though. Look how slow this is. Like, compared to when I did this on my Ranger and just like blasted him in the face, like, what am I doing so wrong that this is so abysmally slow? Because Flame Wall is my best ability. It has the most DPS. I've killed every boss without phases before they finish monologuing. Well, not all of us can be as talented as you. Some of us suck wieners. By which I mean hot dogs. Ugh, okay, that hurt. Ow. Oh, okay. We're at a new part. For my people. Oh god. Oh. Man, I forgot how good I have it at home. I was streaming my PC remotely and trying to play on my laptop. The delayed input alone was like so sad. But I made the Spark build and I just ran around the map like holding left click. So I mean, with a remote connection, I was effectively understanding that everything that I was seeing on screen probably happened the better part of a second ago in reality on my home computer. And I was just trying to be like AI, predicting the future, most of the time getting it wrong. And I'm like, oh, now everything is smooth and I can see what's happening right down to the millisecond. Like, yes, dude. I took my ping and I Kylo Ren'd it. More! More! Ah. Yes, Danny. I told you I added it to my playlist. I like it. It's a bop. It reminds me of Miley Cyrus. I dig it. Ink, Hamster, this is Danny. He's new here. Be nice to him. You know, like how you guys are historically so not nice. Lol, lol. Fine. These are my regulars. The peeps who are normally hanging out in chat. You were in my chat on an off night. These are the guys who make it seem like people actually watch me. My home dogs. Were you rude to me? No, I'm saying, I'm asking them to be nice to you sarcastically. They're very nice people. Although there's always time to change. I mean, everyone can have their villain arc. Oh my god, this is so fucking slow. I want this to be over, but I know that this battle is gonna go on for like another 20 minutes. I gotta run around in circles like a dummy. Elon is one bad event away from a supervillain? I mean, he basically is Lex Luthor. Almost said Lux Luthor. It wasn't Lex Luthor, whatever the fuck his name is. Like a super rich dude who was just on the side of evil. Isn't that like the premise of The Incredibles, is like a boy Lex Luthor? Oh. I love me dark humor, be you. Oh yes, Danny's also the reason that I've disabled the active shield moderator thing. Because I've never seen someone trigger the text moderator so many times so quickly. And I just couldn't be bothered to keep clicking the allow button. I mean, chat is chill enough that I can just proactively monitor when necessary. It's rarely necessary anyway. Have you tried ordering it off Amazon? Or sorry, I was talking too much. Oh, damage. Yeah. I need some damage off Amazon yesterday. I need Prime Deliver. This is so sad. I thought I was trying to like make my damage better by putting all my points like into flame damage or whatever, but I just made things worse. This is not good. PoE3 might be out by the time he's dead. I know. I said this before the fight started. Maybe you weren't here yet. But I said my damage is so bad and I haven't been able to beat this boss because I was also dying from just straight up ping issues trying to play remotely. Don't ever play games remotely. It's terrible. There's a reason cloud gaming has not taken off. It's ridiculous. For playing Sork? I mean, I don't play Sork. I just saw how effective Sork can be as like basically a farmer. Okay, we're at phase 2. Holy. I thought it would never come. Now more of this. Ow. God damn it. Ow.
The manifest prepare. The era of the Faradun is now. Take our hate.
God damn it. Okay, enjoy the dog walk. God damn it. There's a reason I decided to do this now, because I knew how slow it was going to be, and by the time I'm finished, like an hour from now, they're going to start talking about what they're doing for patch 0.1.1. All part of the plan. Was this the plan? Always has been. Aw, fuck. If I could turn back time. What? Come on, bro. Oh god. Okay. We're in the cage. Let's maybe leave the cage. Oh my god. These tornadoes. Get over here. Americans will pay. Yes. Oh my gosh. Come over here. Get out of there. No.
The Marrakech will pay!
Oh my god. What am I getting stuck on? Ooh! Okay, I shouldn't stand so close when he's doing that.
The Marrakech will pay!
Ooh! Okay, come over here.
Our gift to you! Damn you!
I mean, not that anyone needs it, but if I ever wanted to do a breakdown on Jamonra and all of his phases and moves and attacks and sequences, then I could just do like a complete breakdown. I'm getting so much good footage of everything he does.
The Marrakech will pay for hate! The Marrakech will pay! We will have blood!
Oh my god, we're at 50%, boys. Here we go. I should maybe lower his fire resistance. That'd be something. Just keep hitting him with that debuff.
We will have blood!
Uh-oh. Too soon.
For damn
That's okay.
the era of the Faradun is now!
Oh, come on. Well, we can rewind. Uh-oh. Well, let's get out of there. Come over here. Come over here. Thank you.
Take our hate! The era of the Faradun, the Marrakech will pay! Our gift to you! We will have blood!
God, this sucks. Alright, come here.
Marrakech will pay!
Come here. Oh, God.
Our gift to you! The Marrakech will pay! Our gift to you!
God damn it. Come on. Come on.
Of hate! We will have blood!
Oh. Just slowing down the process with all these tornadoes.
Of hate! For damn you!
Okay, new stuff.
Blot out the sun. The Americans will pay.
Ooh.
Our hate.
Ow. Alright, just rewind that.
We will blot out the sun. The era of the Paladin is now. Our gift to you. The Americans will pay. We will blot out the sun. You will be forgotten.
Nope. Nuh-uh.
The Paladin Forge. Our hate. Ten 10,000 spears.
Ow.
Our gift to you. 10,000 spears. I will grind you into dust. Our gift to you. We will blot out the sun. The era of the Paladin is now.
Desert fire!
Our hate. 10,000 spears. I will erase you. The Americans will pay. 10,000 spears. Our gift to you.
No.
The Americans will pay. Wings to me. 10,000 spears. Our gift to you.
Rewind.
Era of the Paladin, I will erase you. Ten 10,000 spears. Take our hate. The era of the Paladin is now. Winds to me.
Oh boy.
10,000 spears. The era of the Paladin is now. Gift to you. The Americans will pay. The era of the Paladin, I will erase you.
You will burn!
The era of the Paladin is now. We will blot out the sun. Take our hate.
Nope.
The Americans will pay. We will blot out the sun. I call the winds. Take our hate. I will erase you. We will blot out the sun.
Oof.
The Americans will pay. Forge of hate.
Okay.
Ten 10,000 spears. Our gift to you.
Oh no. Let's rewind that. Let's rewind that.
We will blot out the sun. You will be forgotten.
No. No! After all that, I'm done! I don't want to do this again! Sorceress sucks! What a waste of time! Oh my god. Get me out of here. Stupid.
Quickly.
Inspiring.
We're just trying to build a straight up spark build. We're just gonna spam sparks.
Stand inside a Mana Tempest to empower your spells with extra lightning chains, projectiles, and damage. The storm drains your mana, and will drain faster the more spells you cast.
Okay. I don't know if this is gonna work. Oh, I needed more strength. What the hell? Why didn't it tell me?
What have you?
A new realm of power. Wall of flame.
No, I did not win. I was spending so much time dodging all these mechanics, and then he got a couple of lucky hits in and I died. Because there was just too much taking over the space on the ground. So now I've tried to convert my build to be more effective with lightning damage. It doesn't feel more effective, but, you know. What do I know? I know nothing, Jon Snow. Actually, why am I using this scepter? Oh, right. I need to get rid of this scepter and this shield. Because I was trying to do a minion build at one point, but then the minion build stopped working as soon as I got to Jumon-Ra. He just destroyed me in 2 seconds. So then I've just been shifting around ever since, but yeah. Nothing seems to be working the way I thought it would. Okay. Kill this guy. There. Get the fuck out of here, bud.
Speak up.
Hmm. 85% increased spell damage, 60% increased spell physical damage. But with what I'm casting, there is no physical aspect. But I mean, the other things are good. And Sigil of Power.
Not yet. You will
Oh,
learn.
whoops. Sparks, please. There we go.
I can't do that yet. I can't do that yet.
Oh. Yeah. I'm just not a sorceress. I just can't figure this out. I mean, maybe I'm trying to stand my ground instead of being more evasive. Like, I get that. But at the same time, shouldn't I be able to just stand my ground and throw shocks like crazy? But I'm, like, my build's just all wrong. Oh, it doesn't help that these are minions. I mean, it's destroying this dude. I don't know. Maybe I stick with it and see how it does against Jamun-Ra. Oh my gosh, but all that. I guess because they're slamming the ground and it's just a lot of direct piercing damage that I'm not evading, so that was a problem. Oh. Gems. Oh, rocking a Pierce support gems. No. Should I be? Spark has Arcane Surge, Lightning Mastery, and Arcane Tempo. No, there hasn't been. At one point I was going like up here and I could potentially scale things, or not scale things, but like change the direction where I was building. I came down here towards the ranger area because I thought these would be like the things to do. It's pretty big for clear. Yeah, but I'm more concerned about single target. Like, getting to Jamun-Ra isn't a problem. It's dealing with Jamun-Ra. I just want to get past this boss. And I feel like in a single target situation, this is pretty good. It's just like these guys with their spears that keep slamming the ground and throwing that red projectile at me, they're fucking me up. But like, yeah, that guy got fucked up. I don't know if it's like Asala is helping me, but I don't think she does that much. Oh. Yo, chill. Goodness gracious. Okay, we're here.
You again. The fool under the hooded one's sway. Do you even know what he is? No matter. You'll find my king far more capable than Count Geonor. My king, take the power you were promised. Put an end to this nuisance.
Bow before your king.
The Americans do not bow to kings. We skin them. Submit. You are finished.
The Americans will pay. We will have
Like, already this seems like a lot more.
the era of the Paradon is now. Reprisal. For my people.
You are burned.
Hello, Andre. Welcome. Hope you're doing well. Oh, jeez. Uh-oh. From South Africa. Nice.
For my people.
Welcome in.
The era of the Paradon, the Americans will pay.
Uh-oh.
Of the desert.
Ui.
For my people.
We're running out of time. End this.
All right. We got to phase 2 a little bit faster.
Queen.
That was nice.
I don't have time for this. Sands, bend to my will. Impede my enemies. Our gift to you. Take our hate. The era of the Paradon is now.
Damn it.
I call the winds. The era of the Paradon is now. Our gift to you.
Uh-oh.
Blood.
Oh.
Of hate.
Come on.
Full. Damn you. Forge of hate.
Ooh. Oh, come on.
The manifest will pay. Take our hate. The manifest will pay. Fall, damn you. We will blot out the sun.
Oh.
I call the winds
Oh, come on.
into dust. The era of the Falcon is now. Of hate. 10,000
Ow.
years. The era of the Falcon is now.
Shit.
Take our hate. 10,000 spears. The era of the Falcon is now. You will be forgotten. The manifest will pay our gift to you.
Ooh. Rewind.
Spears.
Ow. I'm making silly mistakes. It's gonna happen again. Self-fulfilling prophecy, I guess.
We will blot out the sun. The era of the Falcon is now.
Oh, too soon.
The era of the Falcon. I call the winds. We will blot out the sun. You will be forgotten.
No. Oh, there's too much, man. There's too much going on.
Now, our gift to you.
Well, like, what is this? 2 tornadoes, 4 lightning balls, 16 fucking shocks from the sky, big swinging dick.
The Falcon is now.
I can only take so much.
Gift to you.
Ah.
Endless hate.
All right, that was different.
Will grind you into dust.
Oh. 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 See, now I'm like cornered. What's the deal here? Oh. 2 tornadoes, a couple of spirals throwing swords. Like, my goodness. An itchy nose. Hardly seems fair.
The manifest will pay. The manifest will pay. Cannot give up.
No, 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 no. Why is that tornado there?
Into dust. The manifest will pay. Our gift to you.
I dodged too soon again. Because that's just what I do. That's what they call me. Dodge too soon dapper. Holy Mackinaw.
Asala,
She's underneath him.
this is not over. Not yet. I return you to the embrace of death! It is done.
Sheesh.
Garukan favors me. The war, it better.
You're that good, you're dodging the dodge window, and I don't need to dodge during the dodge window. I just survive because this game is easy. All you have to do is talk about how bad at the game you are. Reverse psychology, the game thinks, aw, I should let him win, and it let me win. Stupid game. So easy. Game got punked.
My worst.
Come now, Shade. Share your truth with me.
I am sin, thief of virtue.
I am. It was all that while there.
The husband of Garu Khan.
What have you learned?
This build seems okay. It's doing what it's supposed to do.
We now move swiftly. Yes, until...
The beast.
The beast. Also, I think this timer is wrong. It's supposed to be at... Oh, this is a replay of the last stream. That's funny. Well, then I can just, like, manipulate it to my own wants. I thought they had a timer on their channel going. Yeah, that's about right. That's, like, dead on, actually. The Lord of Time. I can run this way, and then I can reverse time.
Let's get on with this.
Time is my servant.
What have you?
Die, scum!
Excuse me, who let you in here? Let anybody in, true. There's a joke in there somewhere, but I don't want to touch that.
I will tell you. Stay in sight.
Something, something, she said. No. No, I was thinking in a different direction, but... It's not representative of my beliefs, so why make the joke? Actually, there was something that happened over the weekend that really grinded my gears. So, obviously, there are many things that get suggested to me on my Instagram, but one of them is Magic the Gathering. And there's an island, a land, that has an interesting art that looks vaguely like, you know? So, this Instagram magic influencer, whoever she is, posted like this is an island. This is an island. And I was like, I'm talking about the card itself. I don't give a crap that she's on the screen. She's stealing a joke that's probably been made 100 times before. But I write the comment, I'd tap that. You know, like you do in Magic for mana? That's all I wrote was, I'd tap that. And she responds, why? Question mark, question mark? Almost like I was being some kind of like misogynist pig and referring to her. I'm like, bruh, full of yourself much? I'm making a joke about the mana.
By Garukan!
So she goes, why? Question mark, question mark. I go, for mana? Question mark, question mark. At which point she responded sometime later like, oh, but it only taps for 1 blue. And I was like, I don't really know what you're trying to say there, but yeah. I mean, to be fair, men on the internet, I can understand having your guard up as a woman. At the same time, I thought my joke was an easy layup, pretty obvious where it was going. This is working pretty well. Most people assume offense. Yeah, like they're programmed to be offended immediately, right away. Assuming the worst case. It was just like, it was upsetting to me because it was like, I made a hilarious joke and you're framing me as like a bad guy? Like, fuck you, dude. But then eventually, like, some other guys came across it. It came across it, not across. Good God, I hate when people say that. And they liked it. And I was like, yeah, it's a funny joke. I'm hilarious. Get with it. Uh-oh.
I fear not your corpses.
Uh-oh. Oh. Uh-oh. Woof.
Die once more.
Whoa. Good chance of Pierce? Yeah, no doubt. I'm sure there actually is one in my inventory. I just haven't found. But, yeah, I didn't realize that Spark was something that needed Pierce as a component to be effective. Because I'm always seeing all these sparks flying around the screen, so I just assumed that they were constantly flowing through. But I guess that those are just all the sparks that miss. And it hadn't occurred to me.
Die forgotten.
Oh my goodness. Come on, dude. Very good evening, Cynthia. Welcome, welcome. Nice to see you. I hadn't said it until now, but I hope everyone has had a good weekend. Like, keeping up with the 50 series, I mean, I know that there was a meme that I saw of someone who had just bought a 4080, and it said double the capability of the 4080 and half the power with the 5080, and it's a guy who just like punches the screen. I think my buddy who's building the PC sent that to me. And I said, like, yeah, that's always going to be the case. Like, what are you going to do? Sit around waiting for the newest thing to come out and then never build a PC ever? Like, you can't operate that way. Mostly AI stuff, raw power, it's about 15% boost. Yeah, I had a feeling it was going to be something like that. I was like, there's no way that you just get double the power and then offer it at like a fraction of the price. I know that like Linus Tech Tips effectively did an ad for it, and he seemed pretty pleased with the results of the 5090, but like, here I am on my 3060 having a great time. So like, whatever. Not fake frames per se, but kind of like dummy frames. Yeah. Yeah. predicting and filling in microseconds with like the best guess as AI does. What is happening here? Invincible zombie man. Whatever. With DLSS turned off, 5090 ran Dune Awakening at 4K 60 frames, I see. I mean, for some people, it's very important to have the latest hardware, the greatest capabilities. I personally could care less. I just want my things to run. I mean, if I'm in a position later on when I'm gamefully employed and I can afford myself an upgrade, then certainly that seems like a good idea. But only because I heard at least the 4000 series has greater stream capability. You have a on-screen countdown when the stream will start. Yeah, so like Grinding Gear Games is going to be doing a stream discussing what's coming in the new patch. Oh, they just went live actually. Let's see here. People are excited. I guess I need to refresh. Oh, whoops. He's doing the rehearsal while they're live? Hey. Sure. Why is Darth there? Yeah, he's just really big because Asmongold watched a video when he was covering Diablo 4 and his computer was kind of crappy, so we sent him a PC and that whole like act of kindness kind of blew up. And so there we are. I need to switch the audio.
I'll probably like make a statement of that in the intro
Sure.
as well, so that gets to the VOD as well.
Sure. There will be a VOD of this on YouTube. Obviously, the Twitch VOD will be here too.
Yeah, there will be.
Gazi's YouTube channel, he will publish the video afterwards. It's hosted here, and then it goes to his YouTube VODs. There is currently a storm in Alaska because I am stuck in this terrible place. That is happening, and my power's flickered 3 times. So in the scenario of the power going out here, and of course, no other day but today have I had any storms, If that happens, you can watch it on Ghazi's TV's channel. The main PoE channel is restreaming my stream. So if my stream goes down, their stream's going to go down. So you would have to go to Ghazi in that scenario. And then he would carry on the interview from there. That's
Okay.
everything. Starts in 2 minutes. Thanks all for being here, and we'll do our best not to choke.
Good luck with that.
Nicely put.
Right.
Okay. We'll have that as backup.
Okay. Deep breath.
You nervous?
Deep breath.
No,
Yeah.
not really. Like we've done it a few times with, especially with these guys as well.
Yeah.
Not really nervous. It's always a lot of pressure when it comes to making sure that we make sure the community's heard.
Yeah.
That's the only. I'm not nervous, but concerned that we're not going to be able to do the community justice.
I mean, pretty much all the questions are from the community, so.
Yeah, so
You
we're
know,
doing everything we can and then some.
Okay, 1 minute. Just remember, mute your mic when we go full screen with the
Yep.
review, so we don't accidentally talk over it for the VOD.
Will do.
True. I'll do the same, actually. Is the screen big enough, you guys think? Or should I go bigger? Nobody really cares to watch my gameplay.
Okay, 1 minute. T-minus 1 minute, boys.
Check Discord.
Maybe duplicate scene.
Okay. Oh, awesome. There will
Show
be, after the video release in
window.
40 seconds, there's going to be like a 5-minute downtime while we get technical stuff set up. So it's going to be on like black screen, just so you guys know, for a few minutes. But that's like pretty normal. So just heads up for the people watching. Okay. 25 seconds, ladies and gentlemen.
Is he from like
As
studio
soon as I
work?
play the video here in 10 seconds, you're going to need to let me know. I will
That's
have to
fine.
open the chat for this here. You guys are going to need to let me know how the audio is. Okay? If it needs to go up or down, just as a heads up. Okay, with that being said, 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and here we go. Muting mic.
Hi, I'm Jonathan Rogers, Game Director on Path of Exile 2. Well, we're back from our break. We've been playing the game a whole lot, and we've been reading a whole lot of feedback as well. So it's time to assess and work out what we're going to do next. Now, later this week we'll be releasing PoE2 0.1.1. This is a patch designed to address the concerns that we can address relatively quickly, without needing to create a new league or a new economy just yet. In this video we'll be going over some of the issues we've identified, and what we're planning on doing about them. It's worth stressing that just because a specific issue isn't on this list doesn't mean that we're not aware of it or that it isn't going to get addressed. It just means that we either can't fix the problem quickly, or we can't do so without the need for a new economy. One of the major areas that needs a lot of attention is the base experience of mapping. We've made a lot of changes here. First, in-game maps have received a balance pass to the number of monsters, number of chests, number of magical rare monsters, number of essences, strongboxes, and precursor artifacts. You should generally find maps more rewarding than before. Maps generally specialize in one or more of these elements that they will be particularly rewarding in. Now, towers are a thing that's very important for players to run often, but we only had one of them. We wanted to add more variety here as soon as possible, so we've added 4 more tower maps. Alpine Ridge, Sinking Spire, Bluff, and Mesa. We've also redone the existing Lost Towers map to make playing there less boring. We're now also spawning more maps with bosses. The rate was intended to be 1 in 4 maps, but but in reality the rate was much lower due to some maps being unable to spawn bosses. We've increased the rate to compensate for this issue so that we can get the actually intended rate. We're also adding a new type of tablet that allows you to add bosses to your maps with its own mod pool. Strongboxes also needed some love. They now spawn monsters faster, have a less annoying fog effect, and have also received changes to the timings and effects of the mods on them. Now, let's talk about visibility of effects. Many maps had too much clutter, preventing effects on the ground from rendering, causing you to be unable to see and dodge them. We both changed the level of clutter on some maps, and changed some effects to make sure that they are always visible.
Good.
In addition, elemental explosion effects have had visibility improved. Stick around for longer before they explode, and disappear without exploding if a rare monster dies. Volatile plants are also way easy to see before they explode. Now we've also increased the zoom level on the Atlas, done a pass on various terrain collision issues in many maps. We've also
Good.
improved the load times of opening the world map and Atlas packs.
Yes, thank you.
And we also now show the biome of the
Oh
map
my
on
god,
top
thank
of it.
you.
For other in-game content systems, we're focusing on getting all the rewards in line with what they should be. For Delirium, we recently fixed a bug which caused Delirium monsters to just not spawn after the starting part. We've
Yeah.
also buffed the rate of
I had that
simulacrums
problem.
dropping by 20% to make it more in line with the rate of finding the Expedition and Ritual bosses. For Ritual, we've made Omens now appear in the Ritual Tribute window 60% more often. For Expedition, we've improved the rarity from the shops, but we'll be wanting to make some more substantial changes to the rewards for this league later on. Now, one of the major concerns that we're often seeing is that getting to play Pinnacle content just takes too long, and that when you do finally get there, you only get one attempt and don't get a chance to learn the boss. In order to address these concerns, we're making the following changes.
I've heard this.
First, we're making the Citadel spawn closer to the center of the Atlas, and we've also added an effect so you can see them in the fog of war from further away.
That's
this makes
cool.
them much easier to find. To address the problem of only having one attempt, on the Arbiter of Ash you will now get up to 6 respawn attempts. Respawns can only be triggered by the person who put in the keys, and everyone on your party will be respawned at the same time. Leaving the map still forfeits your attempt, so you'll still need to fight the boss with the build you walked into the map with. Higher difficulties of the boss will lower the number of respawn attempts you get, but you should know the mechanics of the fight by then, right? Now, we'll also be adding respawns to other
Good
Pinnacle
change.
content as well over time. Another thing that players have noticed is that there are less keys from Faradin Citadels on the market, and thought that it was because the Citadel spawns less often. It turns out though that this is just because the boss kills players more often than the others. We've made a few changes to that boss to bring it in line with the other bosses. A lot of people have reported that many of our unique items are feeling underwhelming. Uniques are often designed to be build enabling at high levels, even if they're low level uniques. But we realize that we do need to make sure that more uniques feel powerful when you first get them at low levels too. In this
Cool.
patch, we are buffing a lot of uniques. These changes should make finding uniques at lower levels a lot more fun, and make subsequent character playthroughs more fun too, when you have some great uniques to use.
Hell yeah.
We're also changing a few other things to make finding rares better at higher levels too. First, we're changing mod weightings a bit to make sure that there are less bad mods. Another fix is making high tier items no longer cull the highest tier modifier of a given mod type. This bug caused bows and crossbows to not spawn with attack speed at tier 5 rarity, and rings to not spawn with life at tier 5 rarity. Another change we're making is to make it so that socketables such as runes can now be overwritten with another socketable.
Yes.
Now, as we continue to play,
Thank
we still
you.
find many balance anomalies with specific monsters or bosses that can be nasty if you encounter them. This patch contains a pass adjusting a large number of those monsters and bosses. We'll save the full list for the patch notes, but there are a significant number of changes here that should address many cases where monsters or bosses felt too hard in certain circumstances. Here are a few examples to get a taste of what kind of changes you can expect. The Silverfist Commander roll now does a lot less damage.
Oh my gosh, that was so
Plague
punishing.
Bearer's Detonate Dead can no longer be used from off screen and has better telegraphing.
Good.
Forsaken Miners throw less grenades, have improved visuals, and deal less damage.
Good.
And Lost Men Zealots can no longer meteor you from off screen either, as well as many other changes just like those. One of the big issues for players on consoles is that the web-based item filter system is currently not working. This means that they can't use item filters like the PC users can. For 0.1.1, we'll be enabling the same system that PoE1 has, which allows you to subscribe to item filters on the website. For now, this will be done on the PoE1 website to allow us to get this feature out as fast as possible. Later on, we'll improve the user experience of this and put it on the Path of Exile 2 website.
Doesn't affect me, but
This
interesting.
patch also contains a bunch of other smaller changes and bug fixes that I'm sure you guys will appreciate, like buffing armor and scavenged plating, showing the number of uses left in your charms, as well as an effect when they trigger,
Nice.
The Song of the Exiles.
fixing the music that Una was supposed to play in town, and plenty of other little fixes and
Cute.
improvements throughout the game. Now, we have a huge amount of much more meta-shifting changes that we know we want to make. And one of the best things about having the game in early access with the endgame is that we now have a much better idea of where we want character power to be and what the balance of bosses and monsters should be relative to that. But those types of changes are going to have to wait until we are ready to make a new league with a new economy for people to play in. That's still a little while away yet, but in the meantime we'll be continuing to identify things that are causing frustration and try and address them. I want to thank you guys for playing and hope to be doing more of these in the future. Later.
Nice.
All right, so there you have it. Pretty awesome. We are now going to call them, get them ready for the interview. So we're going to go to a screen here.
All
that
good
is a
changes.
VR
And I'm
back-
sure there's much
VR
more that
back
wasn't
type
mentioned in
screen
the
here.
video there.
You will hear no audio, and it'll just be a blank screen for probably 5-10 minutes at the highest. And now we're going to do an interview about what we just saw. So give us one moment here.
That's very cool. I think what stood out to me the most from that, the thing that I've complained about the most, telegraphing, being able to see what's happening, and them dealing with issues where things are happening that you can't see. That's like number one for me. So, very happy to hear that they're addressing those issues. Because that's the worst feeling when you just die to something you can't look at. The second thing that stood out to me that made me so happy, load times on the fucking map. Jesus Christ, it's been so annoying. The unnecessary downtime. So, thank God. My favorite word, telegraphing, yes. Yeah, because I mean they're going for this, boss fighting type game. You need to see what's going on. But it's not even about the bosses sometimes. There's just these mobs. Like, look at this guy. I knew it was coming because I'm used to it, but can't always tell. But yeah, I'm very pleased. Good video, W video, W game dev. Also, like you said, I don't know if I'm ever going to get to the point of pinnacle bossing, but I had heard this complaint that you get to a pinnacle boss, you get one shot at it, and then you die, and then you have no practice at it. This is how I feel about even trying to do bosses when you're doing the Trials of Sekamath. Sekamath, excuse me, not Sekamath. But, I think the one thing that I'll be holding my breath on is them making the ascension aspect easier in games. I'm very hopeful that they're raising the question of why are you making ascendancy so irritating?
Of audio now. Hello, everybody. So here we are. Let's just real quick, now that we have the audience here, I'm going to have Jonathan one more time say something real quick just to make sure they can hear us well, and we'll get feedback from the chat.
Hi, I'm Jonathan Rogers, Game Director on Path of Exile 2.
Thanks, sir. Mark.
Hi, I'm Mark. Hello, this is me speaking, and I didn't want to say the same thing he said.
It's fine, you can.
All right. And then lovely co-host Gazi here.
Lovely co-host. Mic check. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3.
Excellent. So with that being said, Gazi, why don't you take it away with the intros?
Hi, welcome to Tavern Talk episode. We still have no idea what episode we're on, and we're going to keep up with that trend. We have with us my lovely co-host, Darth Microtransaction, and the lovely two individuals that is basically the OGs at this point. We got Mark and Jonathan from Path of Exile 2 Grinding Gear Games. How are you guys doing?
Oh, doing great. I mean, it's really good to get back into things again. We had a good break, yeah, I don't know. It's just nice to be back and actually looking at the problems again, as much as, it can be painful sometimes. But yeah, no, it's really good to get back into things.
Yeah, disconnected for a little bit. Not too long, but just a little bit. And now back, which is awesome. But no, it was a long burn last year. So it was good to get a little bit of a break over that Christmas. But yeah, lots to address, lots to change, excited.
It seems it seems like with the break, you guys still managed to get a lot of changes in from the review video we saw. It's fairly substantial, so that's exciting.
I mean, that is for the most part just stuff that we did, like, last week and this week. The maps, the extra 4 maps, some of those did have some work that was done a little earlier, but for them, because we knew we needed more towers and we just didn't get them in. But pretty much all that stuff is just stuff that we're, just doing, last week and this week. Like, we try to move, fairly quickly when we can. But the thing now is, of course, going to be like, one issue we kind of realized we had is like, okay, how much do we concentrate on fixing problems people have right now, and how much do we concentrate on like the next big kind of content patch? And so that's like kind of the tricky thing we have to maneuver around at the moment. And I guess my feeling is that so long as there's like big problems that are causing people to have like a bad experience, I kind of want to make sure that those get addressed as soon as possible, at least where we can, so that we're making sure that things are in as best a state we like, some kind of point of stability, so that we can concentrate on having the larger kind of like content patch.
Focus on what I can see.
That's
please.
Great to hear. So for this episode or this interview or whatever we're going to call it, we've done what we can to make sure that we let the community get their voices heard. So most of the questions we're going to go through is questions collected almost exclusively from.
Are there drops for stream? I don't think so.
Right, for some reason, questions and some warrior questions from Darth, and we have some minion questions as expected from my side of things. But most of the questions will be taken from the actual community. So I'm just going to kick us off, so don't waste anyone's time. And we're going to start with a question saying, which of the changes that has been showcased was the team most excited to be able to announce?
Well, I guess that I'd say that like these changes, obviously, while the players are happy with them, we're not exactly excited about them per se, because these are just like fixes to things that are problems, right? So the stuff that we're excited about is the stuff we're not talking about, which is the content that's coming up in the in the larger one that'll have an economy reset and so on. So there's obviously a lot of stuff there, but for this stuff, it's just like really like, okay, what can we do to make sure that people are having a good time? That's kind of the main thing I would say.
Which is exciting in its own to see how much more we can improve, how many people having a good time. So,
so I mean, that's good. But yeah, really, it's like there's no one thing there where we're like, oh yeah, this is the amazing thing. It's like it's all just like, let's make the game not suck. That's kind of our main goal.
So one of the changes for in-game maps is the changes to, you mentioned monsters, chests, rare monsters. What impact are you guys hoping that this change specifically is going to have in in-game mapping?
Well, I want this. Well, there's a couple things. It is just a general, probably 30% more kind of monsters, items, etc. from inherent maps. You get the thing where now the inherent map is higher value, and thus proportionately the league is less impactful, say Breach, which is obviously in its own universe of craziness right now. But the idea is the base map is more rewarding, and thus adding the extra content is less necessary for, say, map sustain. The other thing is it will interact with different rolled maps differently. So we tried to do this better before early access began, but again, it should be now certain maps and certain mods that increase the chests, the rarity of chests, the rarity of monsters will have different benefits. So that's kind of cool that I want people to learn that over time and see what's beneficial, what multiplies better, and then you combine those things where you have this map's better for number of monsters, whereas this map's worse for number of monsters because they're multipliers. So like a really small map versus a really large map, actually before they were relatively consistent. Now that large map might have twice as many monsters as that small map, but it has the same density of monsters. So you don't just have big open empty spaces of nothing. So obviously now the number of packs, if you multiply that up, it has a much grander effect on the big map than it does the small map. But the small map is obviously easier to clear, faster to clear, So say if you're optimizing for bossing, you're probably going to try and have be applying more bosses to small maps using the new tablet. Or if you're doing leagues that, more like Breach, you might want smaller maps that way because you're focusing on just farming breaches as opposed to, say, Delirium. Or say Expedition doesn't really care if the map is large or small. So having those different kind of axes is really interesting, where you are thinking about that as you go. Now, people have to learn that, and that's cool. I actually want people to learn that and kind of post all their details on, like, this map's really good and this map isn't. And we've accounted for layouts, how fast they are to clear, all of that stuff. So certain maps that were more tedious to clear now have pretty drastic advantages on at least one or two different axes. So they might have a higher number of minimum monsters, rare monsters, higher spawn rate of rare monsters, magic monsters, rare chests, who knows.
There was a lot of that balance that you couldn't really do until you actually had experience playing them, right? Because it's hard to tell when you're just in development and you're not on a real character. Like, is this map actually fun or not, right? And the end game is we've got the least amount of testing, so it really did require, like, okay, some actual proper play and be like, okay, is this map, to really answer the question of is this map good or not? So now when we see that, then we can be like, okay, we need to make this change or that change in order to sort it out. So there's just been a lot of just like sanding off all the rough edges that in-game had by virtue of the fact that it just really wasn't as tested as what the campaign was. Go on.
That all being said, I'd say one thing it has introduced is it has added more bad luck or mistake protection to some degree, because if you would like fully juice a really small bad map, that minimum of bad is now much higher. And so, like, you all of a sudden now have invested all this wealth into this bad map. You've run it, and you're like, I didn't get anything back from it. So, the minimum is certainly now much better, which should hopefully protect a lot of people who are falling out of map sustain. Whereas, like, a lot of the good players who are a bit more observant, a bit more familiar with PoE1 were just, like, happily sustaining maps. And so, yeah, you had these two ends of spectrum, and hopefully we've raised the minimum now with these changes.
So 2 follow-up questions. Since this was a question for later, but since we're talking about bad maps in particular, something you mentioned here, what is your guys' opinion on the current state of maps in the game? Not so much from a monster point of view, but of a layout of maps. So there are some maps people don't like as much. There are ones people really do like as much. Is your opinion that you need maps, for instance, like Mire, Augury, Vow Factory? These are some of the least favorable maps. Do you think you need maps like this in the game in order to more appreciate the more common ones people enjoy? Or what's your stance currently on the map amount of variety that are in the game, put it that way?
I guess ideally, there have been a few adjustments to things like that. Probably not, like, we're not necessarily going to take every map people find annoying and change it, like, so that people don't in that way. But certainly there should be balance changes to make it so that they feel at least worthwhile, even if they do have some more annoying layout or something like that. So, I mean, I assume you feel the same way about that.
There's some standout things. Like, obviously, you shouldn't have the levers that you just can't dodge roll out of and you just die, or the levers are just spawning burning ground on them, right? Obviously, this stuff is just objectively wrong and objectively bad, and that will be fixed. But a lot of that contributes to, like, this is the worst map because you'll go pull a lever and die while doing so. And then there's the ones that, yes, are just, like, inherently worse layouts, especially for certain builds. But then, again, now using this other thing where it's like, actually, well, those maps may now spawn the most amount of rare monsters or the most magic monsters or just the most amount of monsters. You're going to have to go figure some of that stuff out. And some people might like that. People with less, screen clearing AoE-centric builds probably don't mind some indoor, more mazy maps if they're going to get the benefit or feel like they're getting the benefit from, more rare monsters. They've got, I don't know, more single target or a more concentrated DPS or whatever. They don't feel so bad now for running that as opposed to just running the, sand spit where you can just, like, nuke entire screens every 2 seconds.
The bad case of this, though, is definitely the tower map, because it's like you mandatorily have to run that map, and so having that be not great is, like, not a good situation. So hopefully we'll address that one. Like, that was really urgent to address because it's like it's mandatory, right?
The tower was boring.
So that one had to be sorted.
Yeah, turns out it's maybe not a good thing where you have to approach a room full of monsters that you don't know what they are and they're super dangerous and you can't see them and it's a narrow bottleneck and you have to run in and just die.
Oh my god.
Even so, like, obviously the variety helps with that, but also the new
I love
new version
that
of that map is now based on the top floor tile set, which is, like, got more variety and, like, it's easier to deal with. So that should improve a lot of that.
Bit of visibility.
Yeah, exactly. So it
more
helps
open,
a lot.
less tight bottlenecks. Still they're still relatively narrow here and there, but yeah, much better to clear.
So one more follow-up here, and I'll pass it off to Ghazi. In the reveal, you mentioned that the boss maps, for instance, were supposed to be more common than they actually were. And so this comes to a very common question about Waystone's sustain. So what was your opinion on the state that previously was with Waystone's sustain, as well as do you believe this impact of additional bosses are obviously going to impact Waystone's sustain? So you think this is going to help alleviate some of the feedback we've seen related to there?
That one's pretty interesting because, and this is probably going to be a controversial thing to say, but like we don't know that there necessarily is a problem with Waystone Sustain as such. So that means we have to look into if people say that there is, and that means we have to understand why that is, because I don't think that's the experience that like we're having as we're playing ourselves.
Get
like,
good.
So there's always this thing where it's like we want to hear what the players say, but then we always want to confirm with our own experience that like when we do what they're doing, that we're getting the same experience before we can kind of make a good decision about what a change would be. So I don't know that we've identified why it is yet that players are having problems with Waystone Sustain, and so that's like, and this will change this obviously because there's more bosses and so on. Like that's the thing you can do. And killing bosses will give you, upgrades and so on. Like that'll help with that. But I guess I sort of like I feel like we need to understand that problem more before we can really work out what exactly needs to happen with it.
There's certainly more to learn there, but as I said before, the minimum's now higher for sure.
Right. So it can be just people running into bad specific maps that like have specific problems that someone who's.
I suspect it's also just a lot of people struggling with the difficulty and dying, and like it's obviously very different if you're dying.
It's a get good
30%
situation.
Of your maps, 20% of your maps. I mean, even 10% of your maps. It can make that difference. So yeah, there's definitely 100% more to look into there. But like, I personally, I went to from tier 1 to tier 15 maps in a total of 32 maps, and I've sustained since. And then you see the things where people are talking about map sustain, and I'm like, okay, am I in a different universe? And the answer is probably
in a different universe.
The answer is probably yes, I am in a different universe. But from a purely anecdotal standpoint of my own, I try and I'm going to see how it is for myself, and I'm somewhere else. We need to look more into the
Unbelievable.
So we have other people at the office as well, of course, and you get their anecdotal experience. But
I think the rate increases will help.
A much broader perspective. But either way, what we've just put forward is an improvement to all of that. Higher maximum, sure, higher minimum, and a bit more safety for bad luck. But what it doesn't really account for right now is safety for people dying and, failing 50% of their maps or N% of their maps.
There is a slightly more subtle thing going on, I think, which it's kind of unfortunate how this turned out, but effectively, because you can power through the map tiers really fast, it means that you don't get a chance to find the gear that you would otherwise have as you went through those tiers. And that means that effectively when you do, like you might be playing higher tier maps than what you really should be playing for the amount of wealth that you've found. And
slow down and enjoy the game.
Your map sustain is bad because you're dying more often because you're kind of playing higher tier content, and that is on us because we need to adjust that so that you you only start effectively, in order to progress up the tiers, it needs to be more that we need to sort of gear check you more as you go up a little bit to make sure that you've got the gear you need before you're going up the tiers. But this is going to be a really subtle and tricky thing to get exactly right. There's quite a lot to that. And that's kind of more of a thing that we can sort of look at over a bit of a longer period of time because it's going to require some adjustments. But yeah, that's just sort of another one. But there's quite a lot of implications to all of that. And I don't know that we're quite ready to understand exactly what would need to happen for that to happen. But that is kind of one of the issues that we're seeing is just effectively people playing content that's harder than what we would hope they would be playing for the gear that they have, which then causes
people are progressing too quickly.
So that's kind of that issue there.
That's good to know. That makes me feel better about myself.
For the next questioner.
Yeah, next in line, we're actually going to circle back to what you mentioned, Mark, regarding Expedition, not caring about the layout and whatnot. But you also mentioned, I believe it was in the video, right? You mentioned more substantial changes to Expedition coming later. So the question is, do you have any particular examples of these things you're hoping to accomplish with this mechanic?
I can't really say what it is, but what I can say is it is intended that every league, sort of, I'd say without promising it, because we're allowed to make exceptions. It is kind of intended that every league provides some sort of access of character or crafting power that is abnormal. And so,
different that you can't get anywhere
different.
else.
Mostly character power here. So aside from the unique items, obviously they can or sometimes don't provide character power that can be attained elsewhere. This is more about something else that's, similar to, say, the instilling your amulet with a notable. It's something that only that provides. It gives you more power than you would have had if you had never done it. And so ideally, every league would kind of do something like that, or provide a crafting avenue that would then give you something like that, or give you more power in general. But yeah, we just kind of have the vendor mechanic where you can do some crafts, and none of those crafts are abnormal. They're not adding extra benefits or mods or anything outside of that. So yeah, we have intention to add something to that, and probably to a lot more of them over time. And as you get new ones that each obviously have this thing in mind, where we're trying to say, how can we make characters feel a little bit more powerful by engaging in that content? But yeah, Expedition just didn't quite get it when we ported it over. Like, you know, we discussed heaps of things, like we could add some more ROG crafts, so to speak, now that, even though it's now 3 out of 4 of them crafts.
It definitely needs something else, like,
yeah,
for sure.
it just needs something cool, something better, and something not rushed. Which is we were in a position where we were going to rush something, and it's like, hold on, let's not do that. Let's get it right and do it a bit later.
Fair. I like that take. Another question we have is regarding the Arbiter of Ash now having 6 resurrection or revive attempts, right? And other attempts to, or adding other attempts to other pinnacles over time. I guess the question comes down to, why wait with adding extra attempts?
Ultimately, the reason is just time. So it might even be that in the patch that we do deliver, that some of those other ones are already done. It's just that because the video had to be made last week, and like we were like, are we gonna, like, we knew we would get time to sort out the Arbiter, and we were like, we don't know if we're gonna get time to do the others, so we'll just like promise that one, and then if the others come, then that's just a bonus. But yeah, effectively, there's like a little bit of trickiness around each one to like just work out all the states of everything. Like, I mean, if you're looking at like, just as a random example, and this isn't obviously that big of a deal, but it's just, you know, someone has to do it, is like for the Breach one, for example, we have to decide, like, okay, so we can't really let you have the economy, like, you can't reset the whole map, because then you'd get the drops from the Breach a second time. So then it's like, okay, we have to make sure we put a checkpoint on the thing, and that means we have to like do someone has to go write some code to like make the Breach thing work correctly for checkpoints, and, you know, it's just like random stuff like that, just little details that just mean that like it'll take a little bit longer to do those other ones. But I mean, we're not talking a really long time, right? We're just like, someone will get to it in the next couple of weeks. It's just, you know,
I'd say King in the Mist. King in the Mist will almost certainly be done,
It's
because
just going to take time.
an isolated boss fight in a room with nothing else
I'll
going
get to
on.
it eventually.
But for the logbook and for the Breach one, you have to have some manual intervention, and we have to really make sure that there's none of that, like, you know, respawn at checkpoint at this exact point in time, and all of a sudden you get the loot again kind of thing going on, because that obviously can be quite destructive.
So yeah, it's literally just a time thing. We'll, as I said, we'll do it in the next couple of weeks, just as we, you know, get these things going.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Speaking of Arbiter, a couple questions related to Citadels here, just some fast ones. Are Copper Citadels really the same spawn rate as all the others? That's what happened?
I mean, we generated a bunch of Atlas state and checked that they were equivalent. I mean, I don't know what to so we really were not intending to make a Monopoly game, McDonald's Monopoly game style thing here. It really was intended to be equal. So yeah, as far as we could tell, it was just the just that the boss had that exploding minion thing that like was the damage just busted on that?
Nah, well, maybe, but all of his little attached zombies, like during the phase 1 of the fight, they, you know, when he summons the sandstorm and you get protected, and you have the zombies coming at you, they blow up after they die. And in the map version, the in-game version of this fight, some logic was missing. I don't know what happened, and those would then explode at the end of this phase 2. So you'd be like, oh, I killed him. You run in to get your loot, and 8 zombies just explode and insta-kill you. And so what you found is a whole bunch of people were just straight up like succeeding at the fight and then just dying straight afterwards. So that accounted for some portion of it. And then he was just harder. Like, certainly the death rate, even excluding the one-shotting zombies, was just much, much higher than the other 2. But yeah, we have now a cheat that generates or simulates generating, like, I think it's 1 billion different blocks, and calculates how many of every map spawned and everything like that, just to test this specific Citadel case. And yeah, everything we could find generates exactly the correct amount of the 3 things. So
speaking
the
of
3 Citadels.
Speaking of spawning Citadels, did you guys happen to catch any of the conspiracy theories related to, you know, corpses pointing in directions, etc.?
It was so ridiculous. Like, whatever. People come up with crazy things. I don't know. Yeah,
All right.
I can tell you. I see. The thing is, I'm tempted to actually do something weird like that now, just to like, just to bait the conspiracies. But yeah, no, there was nothing. There was nothing weird going on.
It is. It's just RNG. Like you have to. I did catch
it's
in the
just RNG,
video.
that's all it is.
It said closer to the cinders, so there is something to being farther away from your spawn point.
So, but basically, all that is literally just that there, where you start, there's just a radius you have to get to before they start spawning. But after that point, it's just they just spawn the same rate.
RNG.
And we just moved it closer just because since you can't really tell like where the like. That's like not obvious, right? And the main thing we want to do there is just not have a citadel spawn like right next to where you start, because that'd be ridiculous. Effectively we just shrunk that down a bit because it was a little bit large. And then the other thing as well is that now that you can see them in the fog, it actually makes them so much easier to find. We actually intended, we were like, oh yeah, we're going to totally buff the number of these that there are. But after we made the change to seeing them in the fog, it was immediately like, oh shit, there's actually tons of these everywhere. We just weren't seeing them before. Seeing them makes a big
Well, that's good.
Okay, so moving on, off the topic of Arbiter instead of those here. It mentioned in the video less bad mods on mobs. Can we get some more detail?
Sorry, it wasn't mobs. That I think, because it was in the item section, and maybe you misheard that slightly, but the bad mods thing was talking about items. So effectively, there's some stuff going on here. So effectively what we did, because a lot of people were talking about issues with higher tier rares as you get to harder content. And effectively, when we sort of looked into this,
proximal tangibility, regenerate
there were some
life
anomalies around like what happens when mods get cut out on the lower levels, just based on kind of like somewhat random things about like how many top tier mods there are of certain types and things like that. So what we've done is it's not like huge changes, but we've kind of effectively done things like I think accuracy went down a little bit, and there was like I can't remember the other changes.
Accuracy went down, life on kill, mana on kill on weapons at least, and then attributes on hybrid gear.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, the hybrid gear attributes. And then there was also the bug where effectively high tier rares weren't getting the ability to generate top T1 mods of certain types, which I don't think was actually necessarily as big of a deal as what people might have assumed, but because it wouldn't have affected that many items, but we have fixed it. So, for example, it was just impossible on a T5 bow to ever get attack speed.
Once it was a certain item level.
Once it was a certain item level. So yeah, but you couldn't even get T5 realistically except from high level stuff, right?
You still could
occasionally, but whatever. The point is like there was a few things like that that were going on, and we've effectively just adjusted that stuff, and it should result in generally better rares when you're talking about like high end, like high tier stuff.
Good.
So we'll just sort of see how that works out. The adjustments are not like mega, but they are there, and they should sort of improve things, I think, a little bit.
And just for clarity's sake, for the viewers, when you say top tier, like tier 1, you actually mean like tier 12 or whatever the top tier is, right? Because tier 1 technically is the worst.
Sorry, yeah, it's so annoying that we have like tiers going in reverse directions in different contexts. Like, but yes, what I mean is whatever the top tier of that mod is. In some cases, it was getting cut out. In fact, I worry that even in the article that we're going to say that's actually incorrect. So I just need to fix that, because I think in the article that we posted, it says T1 item affixes, which is actually backwards, so I need to go and fix that after we've done this.
We also need to make this consistent everywhere and sort this tiered situation out.
Yeah, I do have a follow-up on that.
Yeah.
It is sometimes very frustrating.
At least they're honest.
Something that has a high tier, but I don't know if that is the highest tier. Would it be possible? Like, is there something you guys are considering adding?
I think we are adding a thing that displays on the mod if it is the best tier. Relatively soon, but again, we need to also just figure out a little bit more around this, because we've got this whole T1 versus T random
the
number.
reason why there is resistance to having T1 mean the top one is because then if we add another one later, it changes what all the tiers are, and there was sort of some discomfort around that, but then maybe it's still better to just do that anyway.
I think it's better to do that anyway.
That was the original thinking behind that, but whatever. It might be less confusing if T1 meant... No, because the other thing as well is that map tiers are like the T1 is the bottom one again, and you certainly wouldn't want to reverse that. That would be weird. So yeah, I don't know. Like probably, yeah, whatever. This is just a random small topic, but just one of those things.
Understood.
Yeah.
Speaking of items and quality, one of the most requested additions, item filters, coming to console. So I'm sure many people are very excited about that. Speaking of the topic of consoles, Can we expect more quality of life things coming to console? For instance, I very commonly see ask for things like text UI size, etc. Do you have any plans related to quality of life?
Guarantee everyone in chat being like, who cares?
Yeah, I mean, we certainly need to do more there. I mean, yeah, like I don't have any specific things to announce there, but effectively we need to make sure that that experience is good. And one thing that I know, this isn't actually technically a console thing, but another thing that we will be doing for people who use controller soon is like the ability to fast swap between controller and the PC UI.
Good.
Just by like immediately in game, because that's something I believe there was even an implementation of that. It was just a little bit too
In
dodgy to
PoE1.
release on early access start. So we just need to get that sorted and then
You do that in PoE1.
so that'll be another one. But in
That's
terms of
good.
just general console stuff, I mean, look, there's just more we can do, right? And you know, we've got our guys on console. They'll be looking into these things and just making changes. The text size one, I do think needs some addressing. It's a little bit tricky because there's kind of a lot of things all through the game that need like futzing around with. So that I definitely appreciate that. And like part of that is literally because when we're in the, this is kind of bad, but it's like in the studio, we literally have like a big screen and the couch that's near it is like relatively close. It's like an actual real world scenario. You know, people often sit a bit further away, and we probably should have been thinking about that.
Yeah.
Yeah, things like that just need some addressing for sure.
Fair enough.
All right. Putting aside bugs and tuning that is expected for early access state, what's a question that I was asking about? What are the players' feedback that surprised you guys the most?
Well, I know you were saying, I mean, I guess from my perspective, it's like we had a lot of worries about things being broken. We just didn't know what those things were going to be. But then you were saying before that just the level of brokenness did surprise you as far as like some character builds and stuff, right?
Yeah, like I had my whole like, okay, obviously people are going to find broken builds, but like we escaped millions into tens of millions, and then we escaped tens of millions into hundreds of millions in measuring in DPS, and then we escaped DPS into comets per second, and then like you got to this point where it's like, okay, we're just off the reservation here in terms of just, you know, when you 1 week in and someone's like, here's my 450 million DPS build that hits the pinnacle boss for 141 million damage and one shots in the 3-player party, and I'm like, well, where are we? Like, what happened?
The thing that I found a
Comments
little
per
bit sad,
second,
I guess we
yeah.
should have just expected this, is that like I sort of expected that the first few times people were playing the pinnacle boss, that would kind of be a normal fight. But in reality, the first few times people played the pinnacle boss was just completely like a disaster, because like they just had some build that was because to get to the pinnacle boss the fastest, you also had to have like a ridiculously broken thing going on, and so you just ended up with just like, oh, like you don't even get to see the mechanics, and it was just like that was a bit sad to me. Well,
hopefully with more lives,
Yeah,
people
the
will actually be
Arbiter
giving it a shot
getting deleted in
instead of
2
just
seconds
selling it
is
off to those
dumb.
people who do one shot it, but we'll see how that goes. But
I mean,
yes,
the tricky thing about this has just been that, like, okay, so we do generally want to not do mid-league nerfs, and there was a period there before Christmas where we were making some changes, but we weren't even considering those to be mid-league nerfs because they still left things in a state that was still like very, very good. Like from our perspective, and like maybe the players would disagree with this, it was kind of like when we nerfed something there, we were still leaving it in a state where it's still some of the best shit ever. And so from our perspective, we were like, well, there'd be no reason to have to re-roll your character after this change because like it's still crazy. So we didn't even really consider those to be mid-league nerfs in the same way. But then, obviously, there's going to have to be some changes because, like, you know, there are just certain things that are just completely ridiculous. But one thing we've got now, and I kind of mentioned it in the video, is that, like, we actually have an understanding now of, like, what a character should look like. And so ideally, when we do our first, like, true balance patch, we should be at the point where we can be like, okay, here's like these like 10 things that need to come down, but then there's also like these other 50 things that need to come up to get to that point, right? So like ideally, it sort of should.
I mean, he says that, and I'm playing Spark build in the
but we really don't want
background,
to do
and the
that
Spark
kind of patch
feels
without doing an
good.
economy reset, because we actually need like to see what really happens when you get a new economy and all that sort of stuff. So, and when I say an economy reset, of course, what I mean is a new league. Like you'll still have the old characters if you want to play them, but all the stuff we're going to be looking at will be on the new economy that you know, in terms of like how it evolves that way. So yeah, that's going to be a tricky one. It'll take us a little bit longer. But that is also what we're working on in the background as well, is just like getting all of this stuff to where it needs to be.
So am I hearing?
Yeah, there's no need to do big
there's
balance.
No nerfs coming in this patch. Then is that sort of what I'm taking from this?
I mean, there might be a few that relate to things that are just completely screwed. But I don't. I mean, it is not our intention to do a big nerf patch here. Like that is not our goal. Our goal with this is like fix things that are annoying people and like make the game more playable. Whereas the goal of like the the sort of balance patch that's coming a little later would be like, okay, we'll have a new economy. We'll actually do like a proper balance pass where we get all of that stuff like more.
Because you scared everyone with that executioner photo in the Twitter post. I mean, it looked like the guillotine was about to drop.
Okay, yeah, people look into things, I think, a little bit too much. Okay,
there's kind of
so
three
funny.
kinds of nerfs going on. Not in this patch. Just
He didn't even intend it to be interpreted. People just read into it.
With the comment on
That's great.
The balance patch coming later, and you want to combine that with a economy reset. So is that you saying that there will be economy resets during early access on a regular basis?
Yeah, so there won't be. They'll be in a new league, so you still get to keep your old characters. But effectively, yeah, absolutely during early access there'll be new leagues. What I don't want to say is like whether or not the league as so when I use the word league, people sort of assume that means there's like a league mechanic that comes along with it, and we might do that or we might not. We kind of need to work out what's going on there. But it'll be a new league in the sense that it's a new economy that people can play through, and we'll be introducing significant stuff that would want people to make people replay as well as doing all the balance stuff and all that sort of stuff. But effectively, we need to do that because if you can't really just make changes to balance like significant ones without screwing people's characters over, obviously. So you need to have some kind of thing like that in order to be able to do that.
Just going back quickly, we have a kind of few classifications of things we do address when it does impact balance, and we are trying to be ultra conservative, but if it is bricking instances, as in it is just absolutely tanking instances, affecting the performance and thus affecting the performance for other users, we almost always have to address it. You can't just let that be. Now we obviously try and reduce the impact on the server, generally because of some sort of infinite loop or anything of the sort like that, or you know, something happening per frame that shouldn't happen, and all of a sudden now, you know,
like if you're getting the server frame rate to be like 1 FPS, then that is not alright, right? Like we have to actually sort that. So that is something that we will do a mid-league nerf to address, but ideally in such a way where it still leaves the build perfectly viable. It's just that it's no longer completely destroying what's going on.
The other things where it does nerf and has an impact is, of course, when there is simply something clearly not working intended. So, like an example of that, which I won't try and pronounce, but the shield that increases effect of your socketed runes and soul cores, and that was just obviously applying to all of them, not the one socketed in itself. That is obviously a nerf. It was never meant to work that way. I don't think that really surprises anyone when that gets changed. It's very clearly not working as intended. So those two we're generally just going to pull the trigger on almost always. Right. We're still thinking like, okay, especially in the performance case, that's like blatantly, you know, our fault, and there is economy there, and then obviously there are people who are going to lose their character builds because of it. Maybe, hopefully not. We try and obviously bring down the frequency or the infinite loop element or the per frame while also buffing the damage, and then we make a note of it or like reassess this later when there's a new economy, and we'll come back and reassess that. But, you know, often protecting the instances, protecting the server performance for other users, and obviously fixing bugs are, you know, something we're going to do, and so that can have an impact. But just like at this point, preferably for all the other main nerfs where you're just blatantly nerfing someone's build or nerfing a build, we're trying to currently push that towards the you know, economy / league reset kind of point. Yeah.
All right. It's a very extensive answer. I appreciate that. That's one of the things that makes this very fun for us to do. We ask.
I like the general stance that they're just trying to improve the game overall for people. It doesn't seem like they're overly focused on the top end players who are just busting through things, other than the fact of like nerfing them so that they're not doing completely broken things. But I think they're nerfing it in a reasonable manner that still lets people have broken things, just not as broken.
I guess the first one is, was there a data breach at GGG?
All right.
And following that up with, are you going to reassess the decision of two-step verification?
All right. So this is unfortunately really sucks, and I was really hoping we'd get a post about this before we did this interview, but unfortunately we haven't quite finished assessing yet. So there has been a situation where someone got access to an admin account on our website, and we now understand how that happened. And we also understand, we don't fully understand the scope of everything that occurred here, but we're sort of in the process of like looking at logs and so on. And there was a few really shitty things that occurred here that I'm very unhappy about. So the first one, just to say this, is that the thing that happened here was actually kind of the same thing that happened a while ago when through a Steam, effectively a Steam account was compromised through Steam support.
Oh my god!
So effectively, what happened is one of our administrator accounts had a Steam account associated with it, and this was a Steam account that the person who had it attached didn't really kind of know. I mean, obviously they could have checked, but like they didn't really consider the fact that this was like this old Steam account that they don't even use anymore was attached to their admin account. And so effectively, what happened was that got compromised through Steam support. So. I don't know like all the details exactly what happens there, but effectively what happens is that like they are able to somehow provide like details that they managed to find on someone, like the last 4 digits of their credit card information or whatever, through that they get through some other kind of means, and then they provide enough information to Steam support where they're able to get Steam to change the credentials on the account, which happened without us noticing, because once again,
social engineering.
This person doesn't log into, so there was no they didn't realize that this has occurred. And then another thing. This was compounded by the fact, and this one was really, really crap.
I just heard meow.
So whenever a customer support person makes a change to an account, there's like an audit log, right, of like all the actions, like the events that they've done. And this effectively means that like when we investigate, like, hey, what's happening with this account that got compromised? Like we obviously look at the events and see like, hey, was there anything like what happened here, right? Did someone change a password? Was something going on with that? And there was actually a bug where the event for setting a new password on an account was incorrectly in the back end labeled as a note rather than like an audit event. And what that meant was that notes are things that like customer service can add to people's accounts and they can edit them and delete them. And so the password change thing being a note could be deleted by a customer service person accidentally rather than being rather than being permanently there in a way that no one could change. And so that effectively meant that what was happening is the person who managed to get an account, they were compromising the accounts by setting a random password, then deleting the note afterwards to say that had happened. And so when we would look at accounts, we just wouldn't see this. And so it was like really not obvious to us that what was going on there. So I don't have like full information yet about exactly the extent of everything that happened, but what I can tell you is that 66 notes were deleted. So that would imply that 66 accounts were compromised. Now, it does extend slightly back further than what our log history is. So I think there's like, so we only keep logs for 30 days. And that's like a whole, privacy rules around that stuff means that that's your log retention. Now, there were 5 days before that where the account was compromised, but this is all pre-launch of PoE2.
Man.
So effectively, there were the 5 days back in November when we don't have logs for, and then after that point, there were 66 accounts that were that had notes deleted. Now, the reason why I am using that phraseology here is because the things were deleted from the frickin' event stream. Like, we literally don't know what happened here. Like, the only thing I've got to go by is the web server logs, which don't actually record all the data that's sent in a web request. It's just like the address of the page they went to, right? So effectively we can see like basic information, but because the thing itself that they were doing involved deleting the frickin' records of the fact that they were doing it, meant that yes, it's unfortunately very difficult for us to track down full information about this. Now, we are going to be posting a post with like all the information that we can possibly gather that we're sort of still gathering. And we were obviously initially very afraid that there'd been some kind of larger data breach here where like they would somehow had access to our servers or something like that was going on. Like because we had no idea initially, right? So we're kind of like, oh shit, what the hell's going on here? But now that we've understood that the vector was via a Steam account like that, it kind of means that like effectively what they had access to was the same stuff that customer service had access to, and all of that stuff is logged except this one thing that was not like logged due to this other thing. And then since then we've also added a bunch of extra security stuff that honestly should have already been in place around this to sort this out. So all
quite
of that
the
is to say
tangent we're
that,
going on, but I'm glad
totally
it's fixed.
Fucked up here with like security stuff on this account. Like we're certainly not going to have any Steam accounts linked to, like we're going to audit and make sure that there's no Steam accounts linked to any customer service admin accounts any longer. Like that certainly needs to not happen if there's going to be this kind of attack vector. As well as we've added a few other measures that, to just make sure that this sort of shit doesn't happen again.
Wow.
So all of that really, really sucks. And especially because, like, as I said, just due to the fact that the stuff about it is deleted, we can't like easily find out what even freaking happened. So there's going to be more investigation and working out what's happening here. But yeah, that seems to be what occurred.
So just to quickly, for the people that are going to give it like a quick recap, this was a social engineering breach. This was not like a server-side data breach of an admin account. And this is a one-off, one account. It's now a closed-case scenario. The viewers
maybe
do not have to
66
do anything on their
accounts.
side to worry about their information.
So the moment that we realized that something had gone wrong, we just immediately reset all the passwords on all the admin accounts and deleted all the sessions just to make sure that everything was that everything was kosher. So from that moment on, there was no more like accounts getting compromised or anything like that.
Sure.
And then now it's just been a matter of us like doing a bunch of log analysis, and it's actually quite like. Because the only way we've got it is the web logs, and it's taking a while just to process all the stuff, and there's obviously a lot of human investigation. Like, we just haven't yet been able to prepare a full report about it, but we are going to be posting one hopefully in the next day or two that has all of the stuff about that. But yeah, that was just really, really crappy. So then going back to the actual question about two-factor authentication, I mean, in this particular case, it wouldn't have actually helped because it was compromised through our frickin' support interface, right? Except for that, probably it would have helped in the sense that if we had added if there was two-factor auth, presumably we
would have known that it was
didn't get
happening.
logged when someone changed it wouldn't have applied to that because it's a new thing that they wouldn't have had the same bug for. So I suppose it would have helped in that sense. But yeah, like that's the thing with that. So then talking about two-factor auth. So first of all,
Gotta
I'm
have
not completely
2FA,
not
man.
against two-factor auth in any regard. The only issue with it is that it's easy to implement two-factor auth. What is hard to implement is all the policy around how to recover when people inevitably lose their second factor. And so that's the kind of tricky part to actually deal with. And so like it's kind of one of those things where like, yeah, we will do it, but like we're just not quite prepared yet to be able to do it with all the customer support stuff we would have to do. And like, and it's kind of one of those annoyingly deep holes of like, okay, so like, someone loses their password, what do you do to verify it? The two-factor auth thing, what do you do to verify this? And it's like, okay, so now you start to have to worry about like what personal information can they give you, and then now it's like storing personal information, and then like what's the GDPR implications of that? And like it's just like a whole rabbit hole of just like random policy stuff that all kind of like comes around to that stuff.
Yeah, it really comes down to the EU and
effectively,
GDPR.
What I will tell you is that we're
That's
immediately
true.
going to add two-factor auth to all of our support accounts. So you can bet on that. And that is not a problem. That is not a problem for us to do there because the policy around that is like, well, you just like walk in person to the frickin' guy. If you lose it, then you can you can physically deal with that, right? So that one is how we sort it out. But as I said, we will get to it, and it is a serious thing. We definitely want to have this. It's just a question of just getting it done, really, like all the policy stuff around it and all of the like. Yeah, just as I said, it's all support nightmare around how to deal with it.
Well, I appreciate the extremely vocal transparency about what's going on. I'm sure lots of people here watching appreciate that as well, and we won't grill you about it or anything. So appreciate that information. We'll move on here to a little bit more fun topic, which is upcoming content for the game. So we've been asked, one of the most common questions we've had here is things like roadmap for cadence of releases. You guys originally stated 6 to 12 months for full release, which begs the question, how many leagues between? There's 6 classes. So if it's 6 months, it's 1 class a month.
Wow, okay.
You know where I'm going.
I thought this game was coming out
Are we
sooner.
expecting information in terms of the cadence of releases?
I was
Things
wrong.
like weapons, classes, skill gems, etc.
Right.
6 to
So
12
the
month
cadence
early
we wanna hit
access.
is sort of something
Wow.
similar to the kind of league cadence that we've done before for PoE1. So like that's like I think that it works. Things work the best when you've kind of got like like releases that are fairly large that like have a significant amount of stuff in them to actually bring people back and play and so on. So you can kind of expect a similar thing like that. For the actual like what is going to be in each release, obviously I'm not going to talk about that because we'll save that for the live stream and all that sort of stuff. But effectively, yeah, I mean like that's kind of what you can expect. That being said, there's also a thing where like so we want to be able to do the balance patch addressing the balance issues that we've talked about as soon as we can. But in order to do a patch like that, you need to have enough content in it to be able to make sure that people actually come back and play it and like that sort of thing as well. Like you need to be able to make enough changes and like add enough content that it's actually exciting. So we're going to work towards getting a like a PoE2 sort of new league with new content in it basically as soon as we possibly can. So we're like I can't exactly say a date or anything, but like we're gonna rush for it, right? Like we're gonna really try and do it because we want to get to that point of stability of the balance that we're sort of happier with as soon as we can as well. So as I said, not going to say a date, but basically just. Look, we work reasonably fast. We're going to try and get it out as quick as we can. Hopefully we get that relatively soon for you guys.
Okay.
So I'm just going to go ahead and assume that the new acts is going to be involved in this. But I guess a little extra question to that when we talk about Act 4, 5, 6. Is the plans to add like one act, or are you guys?
Yeah. So this is honestly.
Yeah, I like
this. This is honestly one of the freaking hardest questions ever, right? Like this is actually something that we've discussed back and forth so many times, because like, if you're talking about it from a pure storyline perspective and like kind of what makes sense, like, so there would be, okay, so imagine we release one act, right? It's like, how does it fit exactly into having the leveling, like, do you go like 1, 2, 3, 4 and then like 1, 2 again? Like that'd be kind of weird. Or like 1, 2, 3, 4, 2, 3, or like, do you have Act 4? You can also play Act 1 or Act 4, or like, you know, like it's kind of just weird, right? And like, so like from that perspective, it's like, oh, we should do them all at once, like at some point. But then on the other hand, we're like, okay, if we don't release the acts one at a time, then that kind of means like all the content from that we're sort of busy having to work on, we still have to have good releases, right? And so that means we have to have like more stuff in what we do release if it doesn't contain an act. So there's kind of this like complicated like puzzle around this, and it's like, and what we kind of thought, like, there are issues around this, but effectively we're like, okay, well, we're going to have to make Act 4. We have to be making Act 4 in the background right now anyway, right? So we don't technically have to decide what we're doing about this, like, right now. So, like, that's sort of happening anyway. So I guess that is to say that, like, there's still a lot of argument about this fact. And yeah,
I think most players don't care about the campaign.
Because I don't think there's a really great answer. Like, releasing the acts one at a time would make the making content so much easier, because we get to immediately utilize all the stuff from that act to like make other content. Like, it'll be so much, and like also it just immediately makes the release feel really big, right? So like that would be something that we could do, and it also would be good for our studio, because like there's this phenomenon that always happens where like you say, okay, this is when we're making this thing, but if people are not actually going to play it, then like people have a different definition of finished from like, oh, people are actually going to play this versus like it just has to be ready internally, you know. So like for just a production perspective, like I feel like the game will get made faster if we do release the acts, just because it forces us to actually release them and like forces everyone to get it into a really playable state. But yeah, on the other hand, as I said, there's like all these kind of like practical issues with it. So
damned if you do, damned if you don't, huh?
Yeah, I know, it's a bit of a tough one. So yeah, I mean, I guess the answer to that is still to come, and we just need to work out what we feel about this one way or the other. So yeah, I guess you'll see when we do our next announcement what we've kind of come up with. But yeah, as I said, in the meantime, it's not like we don't have to just make Act 4 anyway right now in the background. So that's, yeah, they're continuing to do that, as well as all the people on the more sort of balancy side of things working on balance, which will get shipped much earlier.
It would make fixing the acts a lot easier.
Let's just move on to the next topic to make sure we actually cover these questions.
They should just release them as soon as they're ready.
Sure. So we're going to talk about a
or seemingly ready
state of Magic Find. Now the perception has
oh
been one
no!
thing. And I mean, shout out to Slippery Jim for the absolute insanity that he goes through, which is kind of showing that it's fine. So, what do you guys think about Magic Find in its current state?
This is a very tricky question. Now, what I will say to start with is that like the way the Magic Find formula works in PoE2 is literally identical to how it was in PoE1 as far as diminishing returns and everything is concerned. The difference is just down to what rarity is giving you as opposed to what it was giving you in PoE1. Our argument for why Magic Find should be fine in PoE2 is effectively like, we're not doing what happened in PoE1 where you got like all these quantity mods and all that sort of stuff like that. Like, it's effectively the Magic Find in PoE2 is what PoE1 had back when PoE1 was first released, right? Where it was kind of like, and it kind of was fine then, so the argument was, well, why shouldn't it not be fine now? I guess there's another, like, compounding with this, there's another contingent of people who would say that, like, anything at all that affects item drops should just not be a thing at all, and which is, like, a position you can take, and I don't know that I necessarily agree with that position, but like, you know, it's another position you can take. So I guess all of that really is to say that like I don't think there's anything about it that's not working as it's intended to work, and ultimately the purpose of something like Magic Find is to kind of give you another axis of build design beyond just like doing the most DPS, which, you know, like that's kind of its ultimate goal. So but I mean that's kind of where it's at really. There's definitely more to look into here though. I don't know if you've got a different opinion.
Not really. I was just thinking the main difference between, say, PoE1 was you fully saturate into every single item being a unique item.
That's the difference.
Whereas in PoE2, you saturate into higher tier rares. You actually cannot fully saturate into unique items. It is impossible. So yeah, it certainly holds different value. I don't know how, but then again, I suspect a lot of the audience who are finding Magic Find to be a problem would find it a problem in both games, which again, completely fair perspective to take. I don't know. There's a little bit more to look into here for sure. Like, we come back from holiday and we're like, all right, let's fix everything we can in a week. There's this list of like 100 things, and we pick what we think is the most impactful 10. And so, there's
Magic
a lot of these
Find
things
not
that
a
is outlying on
priority.
a list for us to really actually look into and investigate more and see, what part of it people are liking and not liking. Because, even though you had Slippery Jim do this, the great service, there'll be a lot of people who just disagree with that. He says it's fine. There'll be a lot of people who disagree with him as well. So we just need to look into this a bit more, honestly, to get a better conclusion. But personally speaking, I don't think it's a problem currently. But I might change my mind as well upon reading all of this and looking into it more. So we'll see how it goes.
So a follow-up...
I don't know if you... Okay.
Oh, sorry. I didn't mean to cut you off. You can continue.
No, you go for it.
Sure. So a follow-up to this is... Okay, so the state of Magic Find is a question. Specifically... do you have a belief on how you believe it's influenced the economy? I'm seeing a lot of comments sometimes when I'm live, people like Magic Find's the reason, inflation's the thing, etc. So what is your guys' belief in terms of how much Magic Find is actually making an impact in the current economy?
Actually, there's another difference from PoE1, actually, of course, is that Magic Find now increases the tiers of currency you find.
Yes.
Which,
I don't honestly think that we have an informed enough opinion on this topic, actually, to be fair. I don't think it's been our primary concern like this week because of the fact that like there's other things that we think,
bigger fish
we really
to
wanted
fry.
to make sure that the actual play experience is prioritized as the main thing. Like that's the kind of, our focus right now. Which, I mean, obviously this affects it, but it's kind of like something where like it's a slightly longer term concern. So it's something we need to definitely investigate more.
And he has also touched on the fact that they need to slow people down because they're progressing through the content so quickly that they're, hitting a point where they're running out of waystones because they've just been progressing through the tiers, but haven't been earning the gear that's going to give them the upgrades that they need. And some might point to Magic Find as that being the problem, but maybe you just need to be playing more at each tier so that you're better equipped that way.
I see what you mean. Yep, that's a very good point.
What is the reasoning for reintroducing quantity that you made a decision to remove in PoE1?
I don't think that we looked at that as reintroducing quantity, but you are correct that it does increase the quantity. Well, okay, it's not that it increases the quantity of currency; it increases the type, the tier of the currency you get, which you would look at that as quantity because like you don't care about like whatever transmutes are dropping. You only care about the higher ones, and so as far as you're concerned, that is quantity. So I would say we just didn't really look at that as quantity, but you're not wrong about that, right? That is true.
It's certainly going to be a problem if it is perceived as that having enough rarity is the only way to thus have enough currency to say roll your maps effectively and also have enough to spend on gear and whatnot. Like that's certainly a problem. In which case some adjustments probably likely do need to be made. But again, we're just speculating now. We need to look into this a heck of a lot more in order to get an actual informed decision there.
That's fair. I do have one last follow-up on it, and it's a discussion we had 4 or 5 years ago with Chris Wilson, and the topic was actually about currency drop as well. And the comment was that the numbers were fine on GGG's side. The numbers look fine. It is accurate. You are dropping more currency than ever. But the numbers didn't matter when the perception in the community is the direct opposite. So how do you think about tackling that specific conversation when the perception is completely opposite to what's seemingly the reality of things, right?
So are you saying that the community perception is that currency doesn't drop enough?
It's the perception is that rarity is a mandatory stat.
Oh, sure. Well, absolutely, right? Like, look, if the community feels that way, we should absolutely look into it and do more about it, right? Like, but bear in mind that, I sort of often say, like when the community has a problem, this is an invitation for us to understand the problem and then for us to address it in the way we want to address it. And that way isn't necessarily exactly what the community is saying, but it's just effectively like, I do want to keep doing things until the community is no longer unhappy about it. But that may not necessarily look exactly like in the form that they're expecting, if you know what I mean. So we have to look more into this. That's absolutely the case, right? And we can tell that because of the fact that people are unhappy. So we will look into more into it.
So speaking of unhappy, We're going to get into state of melee / maces is the next portion of the questions here. So let's talk about warrior and maces. What are your guys' feelings currently on the state of maces? How do you want mace skills in particular to function in Path of Exile 2? Obviously, they're very long cast times. Movement of mobs can be very quick. You can get stunned, interrupted. On the tree as well, there's many nodes that literally reduce like attack speed in order to gain other things. So more or less, warriors in a position where a lot of the people feel like it's clunky, too slow for the current in-game play loop, or warrior feels like maybe the first class designed when the vision of PoE2 was fairly slow. So what is your guys' response as to the state of mace skills, and where would you like to take it?
Well, a first question I would have for you is, do you think it's a problem during campaign or only in in-game?
I would say it is more specifically a problem in an exponential ramping as you continue the game until you hit a point where there's pinnacle bosses, and then you can kind of one-shot pinnacle bosses with some of the setups currently. So there's a mid portion of the middle to later in-game in which it feels like a problem, specifically because you have things like volatiles that actually track you, and if you stay in position, you're heavily punished. So it seems counterintuitive to the design of some of the mobs.
I do think that there is a problem in game here. I'm not exactly sure what we need to do about it yet, though. I'm glad to hear you say that it's an in-game issue and not a campaign issue, because I have to say that my experience playing Warrior through campaign is actually that it's fine. But I did hear a bunch of people talking about that as if that was not fine, and I think that it is. Like, I think, or at least I can't reproduce the issue during campaign if that's the case. So really, it is more of an in-game issue, and I don't know that I've got a solution for you right now.
Good.
Yeah, like it's. We
Humble
do need
flex.
to, like, once again, it's one of those more subtle things that we need to look into, and I suspect that the big balance patch will be looking at that a lot more. There is something about the warrior that doesn't scale in the same way that some of the other classes do, I believe. But that we sort of need to understand what the other classes end up looking like as well a little bit to understand that as well. Yeah, I don't know if you've got any more different opinions about that.
Well, I mean, the attack speed is a big part of it, right? You obviously have that is a multiplicative axis that every other cast speed or attack speed is a multiplicative axis every other, or I guess comet trigger speed, that every other class is getting, and the warrior has a deficiency in that. And even if you were to get it, yes, obviously there's the fixed attack times which don't scale. It's probably a combination of those are too punishing, or there's too much of them, and there's not enough attack speed available. It'll be somewhere in that region for sure where we have to make some adjustments, and it probably won't even be that drastic to get it to feel right. And of course, like, it is easy to compare it to, especially, I know you said more like late mid to mid end game thing, but like when you look at the like top end, it's very easy to compare it to the absolute insanity that is, like, Pillar of the Cage God with Hoa and all of that, which is just ridiculous right now. It's very easy to compare it to that and be like, well, Warrior will never be viable. But there are also a lot of quite good end game warriors that are certainly being played, and I don't want to certainly make it seem like it's completely useless. And I mean people using maces, not just people who are doing it for the ascendancies.
Karn's a notable example. He's like level 99 in SSF, but he's having to use the Herald of Ice tech, which is very highly speculative to be nerfed, right, in order to make it feel good. So while I would agree there's people that are doing it, I would also argue there are people that are doing it as a masochist in order to be like, I'm a warrior guy, I'm going to do it regardless.
There are also others, maybe not that advanced and not that far up in terms of her level. But yeah, sure, understood. Like, it's certainly on the weaker end at the end game, like, without question. That being said, I don't think it will take too much to get it there. But yeah, again, it's part of this massive balance, recalibration we didn't need to do now that we've seen the state of everything.
Right.
Warrior or mace skills are certainly on the ones where you're going to do a lot more bringing up than you're going to do bringing down. Aside from things like the Hammer of the Gods, just one shot with bleed and then the boss is dead and you don't do anything, right? You get those anomalies out there where it's like, yeah, they're going to die in one shot no matter what. Things like that aren't going to be buffed necessarily, but
fair enough.
There is more to buff in the mace spectrum than there is in most of the other things, I'd say, yes.
So that answers the offensive spectrum for the warrior. Now let's talk about the defensive. And one of the things in the reveal video was armor, for instance, is getting fixed or buffed, I should say, and we'll talk about that in a moment.
one of the reasons we didn't dwell on that too much is because I wouldn't want people to think that that's more of a change than it is. Like, we are doing a bit of a buff to armor, but it's not like the hugest deal. I think there is more we have to do. Like, there's more complicated stuff we have to do with armor, I think, to make it more interesting. But there's a lot of arguments about this. One, because it is like, yeah, I'll just say that there's a lot of arguments about like how exactly this should be addressed. One concern that we have, which is probably totally out of left field as far as what the players would say, is that we don't think that there's enough of a difference between the big hit and the small hit. There's a number in the formula that is different in PoE 1 than it is in PoE 2. That results in the armor being the difference between a small hit and a big hit in PoE 2 and PoE 1. It matters more in PoE 1. But in addition to that, so we actually think that PoE 2 might be wrong in this regard, and we need to change it. But in addition to that, there's also a thing that's happened where like white monsters can hit harder in PoE 1 and PoE 2 than they did in PoE 1, and that means that the thing that armor is supposed to like, because like part of the intention with armor is it's like, okay, like when you're talking about like big boss hits, like it has less of an effect than what it would have off like a bunch of small hits. But sometimes the small hits from a white mob are not even that different from what a boss hits you with. And so this is actually meaning that the sort of the idea of armor being based on the damage hit is kind of got like a few issues that we have to deal with. So I don't know if you've got any more thoughts on this particular topic, but it is like something that we have to sort of worry about a little bit.
Yeah. It's again one of these things I do need. I mean, I hate coming in here so unequipped, but again, it's just the timing with the holiday and all that, with all these things where it's like have to look into. But that is the nature of it. I mean, especially once there's an actual released product, it's like a good, 50% of our time goes into having to investigate and look into live operations problems like this.
So we are buffing a little bit of armor a little bit in this patch for like to because there are some issues there. But honestly, the full solution for armor is going to have to be more complicated, and we're going to have to sort of work out some stuff around it. It's there's definitely something that I think there was another thing as well, is that like the other defenses tend to have like extra mechanics that are easier to access than what armor has. Which is another sort of side thing, which is like not entirely obvious when you're designing it initially. So it might be that there's more like supplementary things that the armor, like strength characters effectively need to have around defense. And so like stuff like that can kind of matter a lot. So
like Wind Dancer's universally just better than Scavenge Plating as an example, if those are meant to be paired. One is just like you have it, and the other is I have to armor break, and then on bosses it's much harder to sustain. So we've made changes there, of course. We did buff the armor. I'd say it's obviously hard because of the big hit, small hit, but it's probably in the like 15% more effective kind of region. Our changes in 011. And then a lot of it is also like, okay, if you consider that evasion also applies to damage mitigation from Invoker. You got a lot of things going on with acrobatics, which turns evasion into
might be time to go back to the warrior.
Penalizes your evasion, but like it then
I'll think about it.
Kind of gives you almost as much PDR against certain hits as a lot of armor, and then you have a lot of very, very strong defensive, with Grim Feast and Energy Shield, and so like. It's not only armor is weak, it's also that evasion and energy shield have some extreme strongs that are going on. To say, these are all going to be nerfed. I'm just saying there's some meeting in the middle that we need to do for sure.
So to give you a feeling from, like, I played Warrior 90 first. That was the first thing I did, and I would enjoy Warrior as an archetype the most. Would you say it's a fair statement to say the Warrior and mace skills and, sort of that side of the tree in particular is in a state where it has the worst of all of them? So it has the worst of the defenses and armor, it has the worst effective HP in terms of life, and it has basically the worst offensive capabilities as well. So you could see why I'm feedbacking so hard in relation to this archetype.
Man, that's a brutal savaging, but I suppose I can't necessarily disagree with any of those assessments.
Fair enough. We can move on to the next topic then, unless you have other statements on it.
Oh, what do they have?
You have shields.
Yeah. You are right that it effectively falls in that way. Yeah. Let's just sure.
Yep.
Okay. So moving forward here, we have charms. So I saw that there were some notable changes in relation to charms. I thought it was a great change to be able to see when they're actually being activated, as well as the charms that are there as well. So some clarity things in relation to charm. I don't know if I saw whether or not charms in particular are actually getting tweaked in terms of number side of things, or if it was just some transparency related to charms. But how do you guys feel about...
we're not tweaking numbers in this patch. However, there's definitely something not right about charms as far as like the usefulness goes and all that sort of stuff. Like we need to do something. I don't think we've decided what it is yet, but it's clear to us at this point. Like, so charms came in like super late, and I just don't think they're quite like working out as well as I'd hoped. Like they just need something else, but we don't quite know what that will be yet. But we did want to at least make, like, one of the issues they did have is like you couldn't even tell when they helped you. So that certainly wasn't helping the case for them. So we can at least fix that. But yeah, there probably does need to be more stuff done with them, I think. I think it comes down a little bit to like how much do ailments matter against the player, and that's sort of something that
there's a few other ones. Like there's the one that's like unaffected. The next time you get slowed, protect you from slows, and honestly, a lot of the debuffs applied by monsters haven't been correctly classified as slows. And so it doesn't even work against them, and like there's a little bit of things like that where
I wasn't aware of that one.
Yeah, it's just kind of a bit bad. But yeah, there's a balance there of like, okay, most people have one slot, and then you got these mandatory mods to get more. But I don't
think you get enough charm slots. Just like I feel like you barely find belts with the extra slots. To be honest,
I agree.
I mean, we really just didn't finish. I mean, we increased the weightings. We've had patched that in since release. Yes.
Oh, okay.
Can't remember what patch it was in, but honestly, we're not all the way there yet, for sure. It's one of those things where it's not like ruining experience for players, at least. It's like, just an underwhelming thing that needs some love, for sure. So it's not exactly number in the top 10 of the hit list, but like without a doubt, I would expect to see improvements around there in the future.
Following up on the charms there, any thoughts regarding adding more charm slots for uniques? It feels really hindering to equip a unique when it comes to the topic of charms.
So this is the whole, like, if you have a unique belt, you only have one always.
Yeah, that's not a bad idea.
I also just want to add more slots outside of unique, so more on the tree and other ways to get them as well.
Sure.
So you don't necessarily have to, because like there's nothing. I think at the time we had it that like you couldn't have more than 3. Like internally it was implemented that way, and now it's like you could have 50 slots, plus 1 slots, but you'd only have 3, obviously. So we can give away a lot more +1 now and plus whatever we want all over the place. But yeah, I mean that is a way, yes, that some unique should have it, and probably more on the tree, more in other ways. I have to have a look at it, but yeah, there's no harm in it now, at least.
Yeah. All right, we're gonna move over to another topic, which is speaking of belts and trading the unique belts, for example. State of crafting and future plans is also involved. So I'm going to start with crafting and future plans you have there, and then we're going to talk about trade. So the current state of crafting is very different from PoE1. The perception, again, to go back on that in PoE2, is that you're not actually crafting unless it's rog-pog crafting. You're actually just pulling the arm on the vendor machine, on the gambling machines. So what's the state here and future plans?
I don't know that there's a huge amount we can say about this right now. Unless you've got any particular thoughts that you think you can go into. I mean, like, well, one thing, of course, is that PoE2 just has less crafting systems than PoE1, just due to the fact that we add these typically with leagues and so on. So there's just less going on, which means that if you're like a PoE1 player, then you're going to see less complexity there, for sure. But I don't think that's exactly what you're getting at, right? Like, I guess there's some theory. I mean, effectively what you're saying is people want more determinism, right? Which is like a continuous, endless thing that like people.
There's a fine line there, and we're on the certainly more on the slot machine side of that line, like without a doubt, obviously, right? And there's more we need to do, I would say, to get towards that line. But that's our line that we determine. Not that I know how to describe that, because there's plenty of people who are just going to be like make everything fully deterministic all the way.
I mean, before we released, we had for a while a system that involved like deconstructing mods and then putting specific mods on items and so on. And like we just kind of like no one like with a system like that, we were never able to get it to the point where both people who played the game were happy and like we could be happy as far as like what it would let you do. And that like there's still something along those lines we might be able to do one day to kind of work that out, but we just kind of haven't really hit it yet. Socketables were kind of supposed to be the thing that was you had full control over, that's like determinism, and so that like
which has a lot of room to expand over time.
Sure.
like,
So there's more stuff you can do there. But I guess because people see that as supplementary, they don't even necessarily see it as part of the crafting system, which is kind of interesting. Like it sort of replaced the crafting system in a way, but then, as I said, people don't really see it as part of it. So, I don't know. Like, I mean, I guess the thing is we just have to find a way to do more things that make people feel like they have more control without actually sacrificing the without making it too easy to just get the best shit, which is obviously always the concern, like making sure that there's still enough room for there to be items that are significant, like that are better than other items. So I mean, that's kind of where we're at, I suppose.
The other thing, of course, being it is important that to make sure as we add more of this determinism or get towards that line, that we don't then just immediately devalue all item drops on the ground, right? Because that creates a different problem when now all of a sudden you don't really care about what you're finding, or you're only caring about normal items you're finding, or you create a different problem by doing that for sure.
And there is an argument certainly by people internally that PoE1 got to the point of that being a problem, where you no longer cared so much about what was on the ground because crafting would always get you something better. Like that is a concern for sure. But I guess that's kind of just our overall, just like nebulous cloud of thoughts on this matter, without really getting into too many specifics, I suppose. I mean, I guess I don't know if you've got anything else to say about it.
Well, that being said, if we add more, we're adding something to Expedition, we don't know what it is necessarily, or what it will do to the thing, and then we're adding, what I would say, greater essences are too rare right now. And what else is there in there? I guess like there's certainly room to expand on the Omen system to do more there. Of course, people would argue then they don't want that to be the core crafting system to be gated behind ritual as opposed to core drop, which is then another consideration to make. And you get this cascading series of questions and stuff we need to answer, of which need to think about it more and look more. But certainly there is the feedback of like, the crafting is too slot machiney, is something we're listening to and we have seen, and it is, I would say that is more towards our top 10 list of things to discuss and solve sooner than later.
Right.
I think that deterministic crafting is always something that's very sought after and popular, but I feel like I might be out of terms here, but my own personal perspective, I'll say that, is not the lack of deterministic crafting per se, it's lack of options to craft with, because the slot machine crafting, we have that in PoE1 as well. It's called Exalted, it's divining, and whatever we're doing with the items.
Harvest.
It's not deterministic crafting. Yeah, exactly. Harvest. It's not deterministic crafting that's lacking. It is options to do something with the actual items. Because right now you drop an item, and what you can do is annul it or exalt it, or you can pop some chaos orbs. And the meta crafts, which are behind the Omis, that's a different topic, which we're going to tackle in a bit here. We talk about trading, but the crafting has less to do with deterministic approaches, but rather giving us options to work with on an item to make us actually craft it, even if that means RNGing the next slam or something.
Right. And if that's the case, then more content will get you that, because
that will that will solve itself over time.
Right. Because as we just add more stuff during early access, there's just going to be more and more of those kinds of crazy systems.
But we'll make sure that, like, I say over time, it's not like there's something inevitable about it for sure. But because it is a bigger problem now, we would make sure that we try and ensure that as we're adding more content, it is leaning towards adding more options there and solving these problems that people have, as opposed to just like, I will do something cool and maybe it does and maybe it doesn't. So we'll have a lot more problem solving, designing, content created by more towards solving the problems, as opposed to, when you're at a point where you have so much content, a lot of the time you can be like, what are we going to do? Let's just make something cool and awesome. Whereas here it's going to be like, let's look at problems to solve and create content that comes from that. So there's like kind of two ways of coming up with the content. And certainly this is one that will be a problem that we're looking to try and solve by doing that for sure.
That's fair. I'm not going to go too deep into it, but following up to the state of trading, I mean, obviously we have trading being in its state that it is, but there's the volatility problem of the market's economy being player-based. For now, we have a golden standard of trading divine orbs, which quite literally holds close to zero value in terms of actual player usage outside of a handful of specific unique items. and is representative of trade power in the community. And since there is no natural divine orb sink, which exalted orbs have, for example, they just continue going up, and the inflation is just rampant at this point.
So, I would have thought that if there was no divine orb sink, then the value of divines would go down rather than up. Like, presumably, if the value of divines is going up in other currency, then it's the other currency that there's too much of rather than the divines.
Yeah, so what I'm saying is, like, they become the golden standard, and since no one's using them, we get a higher quantity of them. And the result of it is that now, since that is the item people are using, or the currency people are pricing their items off, they're now, one rare, one life pair of boots with 10% movement speed now costs 50 divines, if I'm going to use some exaggerated examples.
Okay, so you're talking about the price in divines is going up as opposed to the price of
a divine is
the value of a divine is going
The
up. Okay,
item value, yeah.
Yeah, sure. Well, I mean, there's nothing I can kind of initially
I
go
don't
into with this
care.
other than just that, like, yeah, we just have to look at this and work out
Deal
what
with
we're
it.
going to use to sync these things more. The intention with divines is that you'd sync them into making, like, if there's enough, like, things where you want to reroll mod values on, which, like, is uniques ideally. Like, the implication of that is that there aren't the uniques that people are wanting to roll to get good values on, right? I mean, I'm assuming that's the reason.
Some not enough. Yeah. Well, I
Maybe
mean,
there's not enough?
we don't have enough unique items.
For sure.
We don't. We need a lot more.
We
which
do,
is
we do.
another goal we have, of course. But I mean, so yes, there's not enough uniques, let alone enough uniques to be using divine orbs for an
And of course, the thing in
player
PoE1
base.
where things were priced and that currency can help, but we don't have anything quite like that, I suppose. I mean, look, if that's a problem, we'll just like find a way to sync them, I suppose. But ideally, ideally, if everything's working correctly, they'd be syncing themselves due to the fact that there's enough things you want to reroll values on, and like uniques that you want to reroll values on. I'm actually curious to know whether people are even really bothering with that. Like, are people actually bothering to reroll unique values?
I guess some, but not
Right,
many.
right, not many.
You won't
fair
know,
enough.
well, yeah, not many.
Astromentis.
Yeah.
Those are like the two main ones, I think. Like, no
This
one's
feels
gonna
like a
play
silly
Divine Orb when
question,
Avengers gamble, so it's like,
but I think
that's literally gambling.
the economy will
But, like,
fix
in PoE1,
itself
we
regarding
have the option of
divines.
metacrafting being a currency sync for divine orbs.
Yeah,
which is
yeah,
former
yeah.
exalted. So it creates this natural flow,
sure.
but also provides this crafting method for people to actually kind of help the state of crafting that people are looking for. Right now, they're omens, and because of this type of inflation happening, they are so far away from most players that, like, even players that plays a lot, I haven't bothered myself. I played a lot with a subathon and everything. Like, I haven't touched an omen because they're too pricey to use. Like, it's a very select few players that even engages with them because of how priced they are, and that just separates a lot of crafting from even a larger player base.
That is
One
kind of
other-
sad.
One other point of this is it might tie into a previous discussion we had about Magic Find influencing the economy in relation to currency drops being upgraded. So I know that's one portion we talked about you're going to look at previously too. So I think these two probably tie in together here.
I don't know that I've got anything particularly like smart to say about this right now, honestly. Though that would be the
Well, we
issue.
are at least making omens more common, so hopefully
Yes,
that
yes, that's but I
helps
mean
to
that
some degree. But
yeah.
I think we then also need more uniques and a lot more uniques, obviously, and a lot more uniques that would have divine syncs. And then I suspect the answer also is additional syncs of currency. Because I mean,
Fair enough.
I suspect it's a bit of everything here.
Okay. So we'll move on here. We have a significant amount of questions left. So I'm gonna try to speed up the cadence of these a little bit. Here
Yeah,
as we-
they're
about
hanging on
maybe
questions for
halfway
quite
through
a
the-
long
We're halfway
time.
through the interview. So we're gonna talk a little bit about state of in-game and state of league mechanics here. So I'm specifically going to go into league mechanics first here. So some league mechanics, essences, strongbox, to name a few, feel a little bit like noob traps. So I was kind of hoping to hear where your guys' thoughts are in relation to some of the underutilized ones. We talked about Expedition already, so you don't necessarily have to go into it, as well as the state of Breach. Is Breach feels notably like the one people are enjoying the most? Do you feel like that one's overtuned? And the other one, I mean, I don't know anyone who actually does strong boxes, so where do you want those and essences in particular, especially when it comes to how often essences are not really rolling greater essences. Like, you don't really see greater essences very often. I actually saw more in the campaign than I have in any of my in-game maps. So I'm curious about kind of league mechanics as it ties into in-game in particular.
Yeah, I mean, look, we just need to do a lot of balance here, and that's really all it is. And that once again just comes down to the relative lack of testing that Endgame had before launch compared to other content. So yeah, there's just a lot of balance to do here.
It was meant to be more that essences, strong boxes, and like precursor artifacts are like the things you find that you can't anticipate coming. I understand you can spec into them, that is a thing, but it's meant to be more like a thing you find that you don't know is coming, whereas the I know we refer to them all as leagues, but like let's say the ritual expedition, etc., the ones you know are coming and that you're investing into. So you have these two categories where you have the ones you are adding and investing into, and then you have the other ones that are meant to be more exciting random finds. And it's safe to say, obviously, you know, there are so many essences that finding non-greater essences isn't giving you that dopamine, especially in endgame. And finding a strong box is like anti-dopamine right now, because it just makes you feel bad, because you're like, oh, this, and you just want to run away. So, look, it's safe to say that those failed at achieving that goal, hence why we have to make some improvements to them for sure.
That's good.
But I want to make sure that there's those two layers of things, where one's stuff you predict is coming, you can see the icons, you can apply them with the, you know, there's the base types of the precursor tablets to apply, and then you have the things where it's like, I hope I find an essence, because it's like, I hope I get the good one that's worth, you know, way too many of those divine orbs. So yeah, having both layers is important. So yeah, and we'll continue to add ones at that upper level that get a tablet, and then we'll continue to add ones that are more at that random find excitement in the map that you don't know is coming. Because you don't want to put it all on one layer where you know everything that's coming necessarily, because then nothing is exciting. You can do exciting within that to some degree, but not always.
I mean, really it all is to say that like there are some of these that just aren't as good as the others, and we just have to improve them. But what I will say is that the breach monster density is probably a little on the high side. Like, it's actually to the point, by the way, where like we get a bunch of error messages in the logs for failing to spawn monsters in breach, because they're packed so tightly together that they don't even spawn anymore. So there's actually like there's an issue there that we have to do something
like
about.
Hundreds.
Like
so actual hundreds of error logs of just like cannot fail to place monster due to lack of space.
So like that we
Wow.
There was a joke if we could reduce breach monster density by 20%, and the players wouldn't even see it, because it would just result in less error messages for us. So, you know, like there are actually some stuff that needs to be sorted out there. But we don't want, like, okay, what I don't want is people to feel like, oh, we're just like nerfing that into the ground or something like that. We definitely don't want to do that. But some of the other league mechanics just need some addressing to make them, as you know, better. And yeah, they just need to be better. And yeah, it'll all just come down to us like experiencing them and seeing if they suck, we'll improve them. And like right now, I know that Strongbox has got the most improvement in this patch, and I know Essence has got like at least some adjustment to make them a little bit less crap. And there's probably a few more adjustments.
That's more about the combat than the itemization. That's something we still need to look into.
Right. So there's just stuff like, we just need to improve all that stuff until it's good, right? I mean, simple as that, really.
Fair enough. How do you guys feel about the progression of players entering into mapping, going from map tier 1 to you're doing tier 16s, and then into pinnacle bossing? How do you feel like the pacing in there? They give you...
They're not going to ask about ascendancy or trials or ultimatums at all, are they?
We know where I'm going with this.
So we're not really happy with how that is right now. Like, we're not happy with how the quest... I mean, the quests that effectively we give you are just like do X many of tier Y maps. And honestly, like, we can do a lot better. That's kind of a larger... It's something that I would have loved to be able to just solve instantly, but like it does need some more work. And I think there's a few different areas of this. So one of them is that, like just the way the progression feels just isn't as good as PoE1 in some way. That's kind of slightly hard to define. Like in terms of just like the feeling of like the progress you're making just isn't quite right. So I think we need to do more. Like, there might be some changes we have to make to how the Atlas works to make that better.
Certainly want some bosses between those points.
Yeah. Like, it just needs more of a feeling
I don't mean
of
random ones. I mean like actual ones. Still along a series of objective-driven kind of narrative-involved things where you're getting your. It's still an end game, not pinnacle. Boss at tier 6 and maybe at tier 11, and they're the quest versions, and you're doing those, and then maybe there's Uber versions, and I'm just rambling.
There just needs to be more going on with regard to how that progression feels. So that's one element. So the next one is that the tutorialization of the end game is not really there. Like, we need to do more around this so that like it actually sort of eases you into end game a little bit better. As far as like if you're a new player, like we kind of just throw you in the deep. Like, we fixed a lot of things about the introduction to the game through the campaign, but then you get to end game and it's kind of like we don't really do enough to kind of really ease you in there, I would say. And then I did have a third point, but I can't remember what it was now. There was something about that. Oh yeah, oh that's right. And it sort of ties in a little bit to what I was. This kind of was covered a little bit with what Mark was saying just a second ago. But like the way that you progress through the tiers, like you can go through the tiers too quickly, and then you kind of get left behind with like what rewards you should be getting. And like in order for us to fix that, we kind of need to make each tier more meaningful with regard to what you have to do there and what's going on. So there'll probably just be more there at endgame just to kind of make it feel like more of a progression and more of a more. Yeah, like, and that can include more storyline elements and more things like that. There just needs to be more, basically, just there to make that progression feel better. The game does take a bit of a turn suddenly when you get to endgame of like it doesn't really feel like it really does feel very different from campaign to endgame. And yeah, as I said, it's just a matter of sort of easing that transition, making that a little bit better and smoothing out that more for sure.
I want to hone into 2 points here. Because you talk about it feels like a different game, sort of a different sense of progression, at least, after you go from campaign into action. This is a question we're going to ask later, but it seems a good time to ask it now. Is that intended, and do you like that as a design principle? Because I've seen people say that they really like the campaign, and me myself, I like the difference, but I've seen people state that they really enjoy the campaign pacing, then they get to maps and they feel like it starts blasting, it's almost a different game at that point. So I think the audience would love to know how you feel about that difference.
You do actually, I mean, you do need to get to the point at some point where you feel incredibly powerful. However, I would say that there is like a bit of a switch flip right now that's kind of not quite right. Like there's definitely something that ain't right going on there.
Well, there's two. There is the character power side. I mean, a lot of people are getting to endgame. Excuse me. A lot of people are getting to endgame and they aren't just becoming gods all of a sudden, right? A lot of people are struggling and falling off and can't sustain maps and are dying. And, it's not like you get to endgame and all of a sudden you're ultra powerful. But a lot of people are getting to endgame and then are just lost as to what to do, right? Like a lot of players really like to be told exactly, here's what you do, here's what you do, here's what you do, here's your next objective, here's the thing to look forward to. And something just like complete 10 tier 1 maps is not a fun objective, right? That's just like, okay, sure, I'll do that. Where we could do that a lot better, right? Go to this place, travel here, do this exact thing, discover this, do a tower, run this breach, all these things. We can have obviously way better objectives and ones that we could still design. And you're getting your passive points for each, and you're like, okay, the next thing it wants me to do is this exact thing, not just, I've completed my 10, now it just wants me to complete tier 2 maps. I see. I'll just keep going. Sure. So there's no like,
yeah.
Whereas the campaign's very story is like, go kill this boss, get here, and you got NPCs talking to you and everything. And then all of a sudden it's just, now I'm killing stuff, ticking up this ticker. And, a lot of people probably aren't really getting into based on the tutorialization. They're not really getting into the towers, the tablets, all of that stuff. And then they're just also possibly finding it a bit too hard and they're dying. And so, yeah, it's not, is friendly to the people who, especially non-PoE1 players, it's not as friendly to them as we would want it to be at all. That being said, like, obviously, there is also the capacity at that point to just be like, all right, I'm going to change my build to do this or go do this, and now I'm just, like, obliterating everything everywhere. And you don't have all those, like, story events breaking up your flow of gameplay. It's just, like, map, kill everything, map, kill everything, map, kill everything, which people love. But yes, for those who know how to do that, that happens too soon. And for those who don't know how to do it, they're like getting stuck in a hole and finding themselves very lost. So yeah, 2 sets of improvements. The people that are going to obliterate everything, they're going to have their fun no matter what. They'll get there a bit later, sure, if that's how you want to think about it. But it's way more important to not just have that like very much narrative driven change in pace where all of a sudden it's just like, and it's gone. And now you're just doing, kind of random stuff. What am I supposed to do next kind of thing? And yeah. So yeah, there's a lot going wrong there. More content would do it, more time on it, more quests, more, But again, PoE1 had a lot of this stuff, and it had so many different axes. If you didn't like one thing, you could do another. If you didn't like that, you could do another, and you could do certain things earlier or later. And we just need to get to that point where there's just more better, without overcomplicating everything.
So my last follow-up to this
Naturally.
in-game topic, and I'll send over the guys who to continue the conversation elsewhere. So you mentioned that there's a little bit of a separation from what I'm hearing about people like know how the blast, like they're going to go anyway, right? They're going to crush through and destroy it. Then you have the people that are like kind of learning the game, getting into the end game that might like get stuck and lost. How do you feel about the, one pour though? Then now that the game has been out of the wild, does the one pour though feel like it's widening that gap and punishing players who maybe are learning the game too much? But it's the people who are going to blast regardless. It doesn't matter because they're not going to be dying consistently in maps. So how do you feel about one poor though state of mapping currently, as well as XP loss still being fairly significant, even though in the previous interview was stated that you don't feel like you need to have the XP loss as much, considering you do have that one poor though defense. Right. We're in a state where we currently have both of them.
So first of all, we did discuss quite a lot about whether or not we want to go back on one portal or not, and I think that it comes down to the fact that I think that it just would really not feel the same if like the whole death actually mattering thing. I think is actually important. Like I think we sort of decided, like, because we discussed because we were talking about the pinnacle boss thing. Obviously, the discussion came up of like, okay, should we just be allowing 6 portals everywhere? Should we be allowing checkpoints everywhere? And I think we ultimately decided like we really don't want to go that way if possible. So we're going to try like that, and that's kind of where we came to. Like, well, first we'll try with this pinnacle stuff. We'll like make sure that that's like something, because that's actually something we've got like true economic value that you need to actually preserve. And so it matters a lot more, and like the amount of time it takes you to get there and everything that matters. But I think if like then to me, I feel like to be a game, you have to have some level of failure being possible. And the 6 portal thing, like it really just does. To me, it just never really led to a situation where you felt like you really could fail in the same way. So yeah, I'm not really a fan. I much prefer the whole like one death thing. As for XP penalty,
many
part
people
of the
disagree
around
with you.
That is that like it's kind of keeping you in the place where you're supposed to be, as far as like if you're dying all the time, then you're probably not ready to keep going up the power curve. But I mean, maybe that's like the wrong way to look at it. I'm not sure. I don't know if you've got any different thoughts about this.
If you're dying, right now there's too many penalty axes. So if you are dying all the time, you're not going to get maps, and thus you're not going to go anywhere. And you also it's kind of like an add insult to injury. You're also now just not leveling. So
but you do have to have it. So
I agree. I think there's a few axes, and I think they're just a bit too severe when all combined together. Combined with, I also think that the very start of maps is just too difficult. Like, I think we should ease into that a little bit. So bring that down a bit and then ramp the difficulty up. Well,
I feel like he's just too good at the game.
I think it's just a little bit, and I think that's mostly due to the number of rare monsters and the obviously monster combinations.
I like the one death thing
because you can kind of avoid bosses, and like I don't mind. I think that's
coming from the guy who helps
situation,
make the game.
You get all these monsters you haven't seen in ages, and they all combine together, and so you have to kind of like generally when you go into those areas, you learn what the monsters are doing and how they're combining, and then you maybe die once or twice if you're not ultra powerful, and then you get into maps and you're immediately sprung on like heaps of different monster permutations, and they're doing things and you're getting killed all the time, and there's a lot to learn. You do the next map and you're like, well, I can't take the learnings of that previous map and apply it to this next map because it's a whole different set of monsters.
Yes. So
there's nothing to really take from one map to another aside from just like maybe playing a bit more carefully, or like not being so overzealous and whatnot. So it's just a little bit difficult there, and I suspect we need to bring down the difficulty a little bit and ease people into it a bit more. But I need to think about it certainly a lot more and actually get a little bit more analytics on it as well, and actually see what the actual problems are. And again, I read a lot more feedback, honestly.
Sure.
It would be nice if there was a way to deal with the fact that. So, I mean, like, okay, the penalty for not clearing a map.
He's really triggered by this.
Remove the extra content from the map, and it would be nice if you could just spend another map and still be able to do that content. But unfortunately, that isn't possible. Like, so for example, if you failed on the boss, then you just spend another map and then you can fight the boss again and do that whole thing, right? Like, that would be nice if that was the case. But unfortunately, we can't do that because it would open up too many economic abuse things where, like, you fail the map intentionally because you want to farm the items to the rest of the area. So it's very difficult for us to come up with a solution. Like,
okay,
I really would prefer that, honestly. It'd be nice if we were able to come up with a solution that would allow you to redo content by spending an extra map without having to, like, have all the problems that being able to rerun a single map would actually cause. So, yeah, like, I sort of wish I could come up with a thing for that. I personally
want to keep the one portal and adjust the other axes and see how that plays out. before compromising on the one portal. But yeah, it's a bit tricky. It certainly is the case. We have discussed this so many times. Like,
I think you should be able to
it's come up, and
reattempt.
before we released it, it's like people are going to definitely complain about this, and we're like, we know, and we haven't found the solution.
It's a common question. Had to ask.
Yeah.
I understand.
Fair enough. Yeah.
So now there's a lot more people. Well, now there's a lot more feedback and a lot more people. It's much easier for us to get the specifics on how we could get it right, like for sure. Not to say it's now trivial to do. It's still hard. But there's a lot more information there for us to be able to, take less of a shot in the dark, so to speak. So I would expect some changes.
We'll have to wait and see. So
one
cutting it
portal
a
is
little
really
bit tighter.
bad.
We have a lot of questions, so I'm going to try to speed run as much as we can because there is a section that I care very much about. It's
Ask about the ascendancy.
So let's get there, okay? Let's just dive into it. We're going to talk about ailments, damage for time effects. We're talking about ignite. We're talking about dots like poison, for example. So the question is, what's your feelings around it on a hit, as it scales on hit, opposed to its dot scaling, which we have a bit different scaling in PoE1 because now it's based off the actual hit you're doing, which was taken away from PoE1. So what's the reasoning behind this, and what's your thoughts on it?
Know that one?
Well, I can't remember the history of PoE1 too much, but I understand the difference. I mean, I personally prefer that the heavier the hit, the more the dot. The issue we run into is, of course, then you just get... It's either balanced around the extremely hard heavy hitters and everything else can't really scale them currently. And then you get into the thing, or you go down the PoE1 route where a bunch of skills have ailment penalties and a bunch of them don't, and that more normalizes it so you can play any skill to do the dots. I would say I prefer the asymmetry where it's like, here are the skills that are generally better. The problem is, I'd say that's, again, I mentioned the bleed Hammer of the Gods thing earlier where it's just now the bleed one-shots the monster and, you get into that kind of situation. So there's a whole bunch of balance here to get right, but I don't want it to just be like, well, implicitly, I don't want it to be like you can play any build and bleed. You should have to have some combinations, and there's more mechanics and more things we need to add, or more unique items and all of that stuff.
Specifically,
It's tricky because, generally speaking, when we're doing first pass balance things, I really like to avoid... I like the bumpiness where we've got like different skills being better at different things. And I really don't like it when we end up in a situation like, for example, in you've got the whole like damage effectiveness on spells in PoE1, and it's like, this is a thing you do to solve a balance problem. Like, this is unrelated to ailments, but like I'm saying, it's just another example of one of those things where you like, oh, I've got this problem where these skills are sort of all out of line with each other, and so we have to do this like sledgehammer to it. We're like, okay, we're going to go and we're going to normalize everything, and I kind of hate that type of thing, and I really try to avoid it wherever we can. And it's kind of one of those annoying things where as games get, like, as you do more and more of this balance stuff, you kind of end up with more of these kind of normalization procedures that go on. And so it's nice if we can find ways to avoid it if we can. And that's kind of why I like to try and pitch everything. Like, we started with in PoE2 with a lot of things having, like, going back on a lot of those sort of normalization procedures we did from PoE1. And ideally, we would be able to find different solutions that don't involve having to do that. It's one of those things that I worry we might still having to do some of that stuff in order to fix problems. But ideally, we can avoid it, and that's kind of why we went back on some of those normalization procedures for PoE2.
So one point, just real quick here about bleeding in particular, because you're talking about bleeding. Since you can't bleed on energy shield, bleeding style element builds are basically disabled against energy shield types of mobs. So feelings on that? Is that something that's just like, well, that's as intended?
Can't bleed on energy shield.
If you're running like unless you're breaking the energy shield, your hit's not going to apply bleed on energy shield, for instance.
I thought that
I don't think that's even true.
I thought that the thing with bleed was it's supposed to bypass energy shield.
It does, but you can only apply bleed if the hit deals damage to the life pool. So if you're playing CI, you're essentially immune to poison, care, and bleed.
I will take your word for that, but if that is how that works,
that is not
how that is meant to work.
Yeah.
I only say this because
we're debugging an interview.
I heard someone upstairs talking about this and going like, people are just wrong. You can apply bleed to energy shield. Look. And then I was like, okay, but I'll confirm that after this. And look, if that is how that works, that is like
bleed was actually supposed to be like an anti-mage mechanic, not a like as in like you can bleed someone past their energy shield. So that was kind of the idea there. So
and I'm wrong, then Quinn has thrown me under the bus. because I asked that question from him. So.
Well, again,
we could easily be wrong. Like, it's amazing how...
It also could be that it has been changed internally and not yet externally. That is another thing also. And, like, someone may have fixed this 2 weeks ago and we never got it live or something. Who knows? Like, I'll
it
look
could
into
still
it. It's
not
not
be
meant
in
to work that way.
production. That's true.
All right, moving forward here, we are on elements. And now we are into ascendancy swapping.
Yes, ascendancy.
So
Talk to
going
me.
back to conversations we've had previously, interviews where you guys were debating it and you wanted to see.
I don't care about ascendancy swapping,
Where
though.
do we stand?
Personally, I still like not being able to swap. I know no one will like that hot take. And there are plenty of other developers here, and I remember even pitching it, and I was like, "Is this your hill to die on? Is this what you believe?" But that being said, I still prefer that decision being ultra important, and I prefer that decision being locked in. But it's one of those ones that's really hard to rationalize why it's better one way or the other. To be honest,
it gives more depth to the choices of characters you have.
Like that hard to actually convince me the otherwise because it's not the hill.
The same
I
way
would
that
die
I
on,
made
that's
2
for damn
rangers,
sure.
1 of each archetype.
So I don't know. It's like I have
Simple.
my preference. I don't know why I have my preference that way. I guess I just like more decisions, especially about characters, to be a bit more final. But that being said, we have respeccing of everything else. I don't know. I don't really know where we're going to go with this one, aside from like, sure, we'll reevaluate it and we'll see. But at the end of the day, we have a lot of developers that feel very strongly. And then we feel one way and we discuss it with those people and we kind of see where we land. But like, we're not going to ignore, the opinions and preferences of our team, either our design team and whatnot, just to overrule it just because. That being said, I sit on one side of that fence for sure that probably the majority of players do not sit on.
I mean, I'm 55% in favor of re-rolling ascendancies personally, so it's very hard for me to argue against it when I would say 55%. That I would allow it, but I'm also, once again, like, other people on the team feel more strongly.
I mean, what I would be open to is, like, I understand you have to go online to have a look at what those ascendancy classes are, but I would be more open to having in-game things where when you're creating your character, I don't want to not in a way that wouldn't overcomplicate it for new players where they're like, what are ascendancy classes? What's going on here?
I'm not really in favor of that argument personally, because I don't think that you are equipped at the point of the start of the game to be able to assess what the ascendancy classes are. So it kind of does. I don't really think that really holds water.
Less for new players, I guess. But then again, experienced players already know how to get that information. So I don't know the right solution there, honestly, but you can bet it's going to come up in discussions another 55 times this year. So
surely we're just at the start of it. Again, we don't want to take too much of your time, so we just keep up with speed running some questions. And the first one here is: given the current TTK, so time to kill, a pinnacle boss is by many of the stronger builds in the game.
That's all they touched on with Ascendancy. That sucks.
Power is one-shotting pinnacle bosses an intended power level for
I guess I'm the only one who thinks it sucks.
It should definitely not be the case that the first time you fight a pinnacle boss that you one-shot it. Like, that's the kind of thing that maybe you can get to after crazy amounts of, like, extra items being found, but you shouldn't be doing that the first time you play it. So, yeah, it's not right. And that's just, there's some builds that are outrageous. And, we want to actually make it so the boss can use their abilities. That's why we spend a bunch of time making them, after all.
Exactly.
So, yeah.
When you first get there and you're kind of relatively equipped for it, it shouldn't, like, it should still be a 1 to 3 minute fight kind of thing.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I'm not talking about
reference.
1 minute of emerging. I'm talking 1 to 3 minutes of actual skill combat. Not like...
Okay. Oh, that's a good time of reference we can use moving forward, knowing that's the kind of the goal going for the vision. Next question is: given the difficulty of requirements to get the 7th and 8th ascendancy points, is this intended to be something that not all average players can acquire?
We definitely wanted the final ascendancy points to be something that was like a significant like goal. Like, this is an awesome, like it's supposed to be quite a thing when you get the last 2 points. Yeah. I mean, as for an average player versus not, that's kind of hard to answer. I mean, I don't know if the average player gets halfway through maps really. So like, yeah, it sort of depends on the definition, but we wanted it to be a big thing that you get.
So, map clear conditions, talking about that for a moment. Clearing
Well, that
rare
was
mobs
another
are
quick
effectively,
one.
like, the only real map clear condition at the moment. Is that the plans to continue that going forward, or is this sort of one of many conditions and is a placeholder, or how do you guys feel about the map clear condition being strictly rare mob clearance?
I suspect as we get to answering the exact same thing we talked about before with the more objective driven and learning
there
and
might be more stuff to do.
tutorialization, we'll probably expand on that. The ideal world is there'd be a whole, a nice cool set of different things you're doing in each map that isn't just killing all the rares, but actually a surprisingly large amount of work to do those and to do them well. Otherwise, you just end up with this thing where it's like, oh, I like this one, but these other 4 are terrible, and
you don't want bad
into those.
You don't want bad ones of these, and killing the monsters is at least something that you already want to do. So that's kind of part of the reason why we sort of went with that in the end.
So
yeah, there's certainly more work. Sorry, go.
No, okay. So the Atlas tree currently is gated basically behind Pinnacle boss progression. Kind of the same type of question as in clear conditions. Is this going to be mandated in the same moving forward, or are you guys looking to add in more iterations of progression on the Atlas tree outside the Pinnacle boss clear?
We did discuss changing how the core of the Atlas progression is, but as for the actual Pinnacle, as for the individual league trees, I think we were still keen to sort of have that be the kind of extra stuff that you really get at the end of that
to get
thing.
the Pinnacle boss's tree, it should be killing the Pinnacle boss. We want to keep that for sure.
Sure.
And for each of the contents. But yeah, I want to upgrade the core Atlas tree for sure. I think it's quite boring and flat right now.
It is boring.
There's not a lot going on there, and part of that is to do with as we add
I
more
don't
content,
understand
it
the
will
point
make
of
it more
it.
interesting, but there's certainly a better job we can do of that. And how you acquire the points, again, getting away from that grind and getting into more like, all right, like do this 2 points, do this 2 points, do this 2 points, not grind this 2 points, grind this 2 points for the actual core tree. For the sub trees, for the leagues, I actually do like them being behind that, but ideally each league would then have its own meta system within it to amplify itself in some way, which we don't currently have a lot of. So it's something we'd be looking into in the future when we're upgrading the existing content as opposed to adding new content.
All right. I bet all of our chats have been spamming this, so I'm just going to throw it out right away. Map tab when?
That should be reasonably soon, shouldn't it?
Yeah, it's an as soon as possible thing. We've got people working on it right now. As soon as it's done, you'll have it. Like, it was not a
I didn't know it was missing.
We wanted it there for
soon.
release.
Perfect.
That would be nice.
Let's go to tech questions, optimizations, and bugs, kind of a little category we have, and then I'm going to do some mini questions for you guys as well. Appreciate you guys taking the time. I know we're going a little bit above the time here. First question we have is something you talked about in a previous interview, I believe, with the Cicerone. It was predictive network mode and lockstep. What is the reasoning behind this specific topic, or what's your take on it, seeing how people are performing right now with this?
I actually haven't hugely investigated this, to be honest. I don't know if you've got any more information about that.
I do not.
Yeah.
I mean, we just have lockstep right now.
Oh, the predictor's just not.
Yeah,
it's not
we
there.
only have lockstep currently.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Well, yeah, we just need to fix that, right? Honestly, the people who would be working on that have not even come back from break yet, so that's just not something that that we've got. But yeah, we do need to get that working. I think it was just disabled mostly out of caution, right? Because we just expected lots of shit would be broken.
There was a few things. I can't remember exactly what they were.
But yeah, we need to get it
There were
sorted.
some things that didn't work in that mode, and we had to re-engineer them.
Yeah.
And no time.
Yeah, we'll get to it though.
Okay, couple just real quick optimization type of questions here. Terrain obstruction is something that has been helped a little bit in this recent, we saw in the video there, you guys were talking about making it a little bit more clear and transparent. But some things like trees, for instance, covering your screen from the overhead, etc. Do you have any feelings on how terrain obstruction is currently in the game? And is there any plans around making this a little bit?
It's just a matter of individual work on each individual thing, just like looking at each doodad and being like, what do the bounds need to be, that kind of thing.
Sure.
That some trees don't fade out until you're like intersecting with them.
Sure.
And it's annoying because you get more, and the faster you move, the more you will be obscured. And so there's some timing changes, there's some proximity changes. There's
just a matter of individual balance things
to be addressed.
There's still some areas.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
And then as far as optimization is concerned, I mean, we'll just keep working on it, right? I mean, in the background, you've got the engine guys working on things. There is one very annoying crash that is very, very hard to debug that happens on, I believe it only happens on NVIDIA cards. where like
Right.
after sort of an hour or an hour and a half kind of thing, you'll get a crash to desktop, and it's been very, very difficult to track down, and we're adding more debug stuff. In fact, I think there'll be a patch. If we can't work it out internally, we'll actually probably eventually make a patch where we tell people to like turn on a command line flag that will enable extra debug information, because the thing that will allow us to debug this does reduce frame rates by like 5%. So we might actually ask people to like, hey, turn this on until we find the problem, and then it'll reduce your frame rates a little bit, but it'll
lose
help
some
us track it
frame rate,
down.
please.
And then once we've got that, then we should be able to work it out. Effectively, they're like concurrency bugs within the GPU. But annoyingly, we were also told that the next version, like NVIDIA told us that the next version of the NVIDIA driver does make the crash go away. But then they also said that they didn't know why that was the case. So like, I don't know if we can 100% rely on that either. So yeah, there's something weird going on that's like quite hard to track down going on here. And hopefully we can work it out soon. But yeah, we just need we need more debug information. It's very hard to track down, unfortunately.
Got it.
And it's kind of annoying how it takes so long to reproduce. Like there's even a thing where like the first hour after we do a restart patch, we don't get any of those crashes because it literally takes more than an hour to reproduce. And then after that, they start coming in. So there's like something weird going on there. But it's the most common crash, and like we're just like really annoyed. It's just very annoying to deal with.
Thanks for the answer, because that was a very common question. People were talking about crashes and wanted to ask you about it. So good answer there.
Yeah.
At this portion, all we have left is some minion questions from Ghazi, just a couple of them. And then we're into the rapid fire portion, and then we're pretty much done. So try to get you out of here in 10, 15 minutes. Go on, Ghazi.
Sure.
Let's just dive into the nitty gritty. Let's talk about Hodor. Minion body blocking in doorways. Let me just add the word, come on.
So,
Solutions,
I
please.
mean, yeah, like this is something that we need to work out a better solution for. Like what I can say is that, okay, so people will immediately say, oh, just make it so that minions can just walk through each other. And it's like, we've done that and it sucked. And it doesn't just suck because of that it looks bad or something. Like it sucks to actually, like, it actually just makes the minions play worse. So we need to find another solution that's like smarter somehow that like fixes that issue. One thing we are planning on doing, just as an initial test that we've got, I believe someone's doing at the moment, is at least making it so that when minions die due to distance, that they respawn immediately near your character rather than it waiting till the next refresh. So like that'll at least maybe help a bit, but I don't know if it's like the full solution by any means. But there's something we have to do around this, but I honestly don't know quite what it is yet. And as I said, like all of the obvious solutions, as you might say, we have tried and they weren't great. So it really is going to take something a little bit more complicated to do to like work out what we're doing here. But yes, I appreciate the issue for sure. Like I'm not saying that we're not going to do something about it because we have to. I'm just saying that like it's not clear yet what that is. And at the very least, in the meantime, we can do the respawn instantly upon timing on the distancing out. Which will help a little bit maybe. But yeah, more needs to be done.
It's one of the big problems people complain about with
For
the
sure,
build.
for sure.
For them rubber banding to you, resurrecting is much better than them dying, because that is part of my other question I had here.
Yeah.
However, in PoE1, there is a feature added as a modifier on well-telegraphed boss abilities that you're supposed to, as a player, dodge, where your minions can't because you can't control them, so they do less damage to them. PoE2 doesn't seem to have this based on the data mine I've been checking, which seems to be that they're just expected to literally just die, and then you have to sit there and wait for them to resurrect. What's the reasoning for not giving us convocation, which would also assist in the whole minion body blocking doorways and tight corridors?
Are there not minion things in the AI? I thought we did do some of that.
Not that I've seen.
This I can't remember
It's so
exactly
funny when they're like, is that not in our game?
damage
Huh, we should put that in our game.
Not hugely, no.
Oh no.
We were tinkering around with this whole expectation of like how often, if you have like no investment and all this, how often are your minions supposed to be permanent minions, supposed to be dead versus alive, and then what are the things you can do to keep them alive? Because it was meant to be more in order to have your minions, otherwise they're never dead, right? They're permanently alive, and then the DPS is you just running around doing whatever you're doing. And
that is really the issue, just to be clear, is that if we make it so that boss abilities aren't killing your minions, then that means that that would effectively mean your minions would just never die. And so then what's the...
It was meant to be more of active, what are you doing to keep them alive actively?
Sure.
And we haven't got that right. Like, for sure, we haven't got that right. So like I guess
it's really
bone
hard
offering was
to-
meant to be one of those examples of like boss slams coming, and then but also then you got a multi-thread. You got about how do I survive and how do I do this at the same time. So there's certainly something going wrong there where we haven't, and I believe there's probably still a lot of boss abilities that just haven't been tuned correctly with respect to, you know, again how often they're killing certain minions versus not. Because there will be things I'm assuming that are just completely unavoidable and they just wipe out your entire minion thing, and then it's like, well, what was I even supposed to do? So. The problem is, as soon as you get into this build, the level of like detail that you have to do, where you not only have to, sure, there might be some system change, and it's easy to probably do a cop out that's just like, whatever. You know, it's actually the right answer is to go through every single boss and test them and go through monsters and go through mods, and like it's a huge amount of detail and it takes quite a long time. We have people like kind of actively providing that more specific feedback, and we are iterating on it. But there's still certainly a handful of things we need to do. Otherwise, well, I'd say the blocking the doorways is a more catastrophic problem for sure. Like where they just like can't get through, and they're like running off screen and them dying. So like we're focusing more on that stuff first, and then we'll probably get back to the boss specific balance with respect to how often certain skills are just wiping out all your minions and you know all of that.
Yeah, I mean, I understand the idea that the bosses are supposed to kill them. The problem is when a boss leaves a damage over time effect on them, they kill a bunch of them, your timer starts ticking, and then the dot kills the next one, it resets, and then it kills the next one, it resets.
Yeah.
You just have to wait for all of them to die, and now you're sitting there doing nothing. You feel like you're in a wheelchair, not able to run around. But an instant used convocation could be a solution to that, which would help with the whole body blocking. A lot of people have been spamming me about make them give us convocation, and I'm in that category as well. But moving on to the other question, to not waste too much time, and that is a very interesting question. What is the reasoning behind making the minion's movement speed a direct replicator copy of what you have as a player, including when you get a minion movement speed debuff reduction on yourself?
So me and Mark were actually quite surprised to learn that when you get a debuff on your character, that it causes your minions to slow down.
Yeah, it's not intended.
That was not intentional, and so we'll just we'll just
to be
fix
fixed.
it. That was not a thing we even realized was the case.
Good.
Yeah.
Nice.
Next one is tooltip is a bit wonky with the minions, with it being incorrect in cases, especially accuracy actually being very wildly off, where it says you have a 100% chance to hit and it's not hitting, and then the tooltip is missing altogether on things like rating spirits. And sometimes when you change a gem on an unrelated ability, suddenly your tooltip on your damaged minions is also changing randomly. Is this something
That
you've
sounds
tracked,
like
or-
a bug to me.
Yeah, we'll fix that as soon as.
I just need to look into what's
Our
going on.
developer responsible, well, they might be back today, but our developer responsible for that has still been on holiday. So as soon as they're back, they'll
Yeah.
get onto fixing them.
Yeah.
A
There was
handful of
quite
tooltip
a lot of
related
rushed, like description stuff happening right at the end of development there. So I'm sure there's stuff, even more stuff that's wrong than that. Just like with that stuff.
I'm
You know,
surprised
I like that they're coming to the
tooltip
defense
stuff
of the
is as good
developers.
as it
Like,
is,
our
given,
developers have a
I remember
life.
2 weeks
They're
before
back from
release, I was
vacation
like,
now.
This
They'll
is a
get
dead
to it.
feature. Like, it's may as well not.
I can
exist.
empathize with that.
And then all of a sudden, it was at least something that I was
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
okay, that's a pretty good effort on what they did. So, there's just more to do, though, of course.
I got plenty more minion questions, but I'm just gonna go with the one that's been spammed the most, and that's Spectres when.
So
Spectres.
fairly soon. It took more work than we expected, actually. Like there was just a lot of there was a lot of specific shit we have to do, but it's not too far away.
Well, the designers have to go through, all the monster designers have to go through and make spectrable versions of every monster, which in PoE 1 was a lot easier, and in PoE 2 there is so much more manual designer-based scripting on like a monster-to-monster basis that we have to like take out all of that random stuff to do with dialogue and like, because you don't want to all of a sudden like have a spectre come out and then you're like it dies and your character says some random thing, and because all of a sudden now your character's just spamming random dialogue all the time, and like
But there was even stuff that's kind of stupid where it's like, oh, the idle animation of this monster is loud, and so if you've got it as a spectre, then like it makes it too annoying, and like just there's all sorts of random stuff that happens when you turn things into a spectre that's kind of not obvious.
Effectively, every single monster has to be.
Yes,
that is
it's true.
Well, we don't want to repeat those same problems, right?
Yeah.
So ideally, the audio team actually gets time to do proper spectre mastering, so to speak, on all their audio for all the monsters.
Yes.
But no,
Just like,
I believe the designers are
Spectre!
almost done with their part, which means it's then just audio and
That sounds
then a
very
whole
startling.
metric, which has been happening in parallel, but a whole metric ton of balance testing to make sure that we're not just, I mean, which is a lot, by the way. There's a lot of stuff that can go wrong with these
Well,
things.
balancing the spirit cost of each of these is going
Yeah,
to be
but
an
then
interesting.
testing it with every array of support gems.
Yeah.
And, monsters can be set up kind of jank where you're like, yeah, that's like a projectile, but like it's using some other skill that's kind of actually like triggering projectiles. And so if you actually put, multiple projectiles on it, might not affect it in the way you think. And like from a damage perception of like, I take less damage from projectiles, that's fine. From an avoidance perspective, it's fine. But then there'll be some weird thing where, because, with like player skills, we actually code every single skill, like, exactly here's how it's meant to work. It's like quite intricate. With monsters, we're cowboys. We just go ballistic and just set them up to make sure that they're good. And then all of a sudden you're like, oh, right, we had to make a spectre of this. Okay, well, and then you have to hack a bunch of stuff together. But, it's also what allows us to be able to make a ludicrous amount of monsters all the time. But yes, now you have to make spectres of all of them, which is... You're almost done. We've almost caught up to where we were, so I'd say, soon, whatever soon means.
Not too far.
All right, so we are in the last portion. 5 minutes, some rapid fires. We'll fit whatever we can in within this 5 minutes, and we're done at this point. Thanks for going 10 minutes over at this point. So
That's all right.
I'm just going to pick random ones here. Search feature on an atlas, so you can search like.
Yep, we definitely should have that. This was something we even said before we even released, but we just never got time to do. But yeah, we'll do that at some point.
Got it.
On the list.
Tornado Bird in the game for Ultimatum is the hardest boss in the entire game, in my opinion, personally.
I believe that's resolved, and 011 does have changes to that one.
Okay,
I believe
he's ridiculous.
I saw it on the list. I saw it on the patch notes.
All right.
Yeah, I just can't remember what skills. Yeah, sure.
It was the tornado. Like it was more avoidable or something. There was some stuff. It is in the specific boss balance that got addressed in this.
We'll see after the
insane.
patch, and then we'll make more changes if needed. Yeah.
Okay. Okay, so Auction House. We're getting spammed about this all the time. You've answered many questions. How are your guys' feelings about an Auction House or in-game purchasing or buyout on the website or anything related to that?
I mean, I've talked about what we could do before. I don't have anything to announce right now.
Sure.
Yeah, we'll discuss this more. I'm sure this will come up again.
Sure. Yeah. Accessibility question. Red-green color blindness is the most common in the world.
Yeah.
It's my understanding.
Yeah.
Obviously, red on green is a very common thing within Path of Exile 2, specifically in Ultimatum, which is a mandated Ascendancy trial. So, any plans around accessibility features for this?
Well, effectively, that's usually what we do for the stuff. Is rather than having a mode for it, we tend to just make sure that each thing, like we test it on people who are actually colorblind. So I just need to get probably Reese to just test all the stuff specifically because I know he's red-green colorblind and just make sure that they're actually distinguishable. I generally prefer rather than having modes for it to like have
people with that color blindness highlighting the area. So Ultimatum, as you said, being bad gives us a target, and we'll start someone there.
Yeah.
Sure.
Okay.
Speaking of visibility, rare and blue mobs. Can't really tell they're rare and blue mobs, or magic mobs, I should say. There's no highlight on them like in PoE1. You know how there's like a little highlight around them? So you can't.
So the intention is that you can tell when a monster is based on the effect of the actual thing itself. There might be some cases where we're just not being successful in that regard, and so we just need to improve it.
We're going to do more there, and we are going to try some things that give them magic and rare identifiers that aren't. The glows just really took you out of the, like when you're in a dark dungeon and you're exploring it, like just,
and honestly,
what the heck is this glowing beacon of light over here?
I just wish Fresnel glow was just banned in games generally. Like it's just everyone just relies on it. Like, oh, we need to make this more visible. Add a Fresnel glow to it. Like it's just this freaking it's cancer in games generally. Sorry, this is just a random side rant from me, but I just hate the fact that everyone lazily goes to Fresnel glow and freaking everything.
Fair enough. Last question related to visuals. So visual effects in co-op can be very difficult. You know, you got people spamming lots of shit around. Any opinions on toggling other people's visual effects, etc.?
I don't want to add an option like that, but there is probably more we can do automatically for that kind of stuff.
There'll be some engine-based things we can do.
Yeah, there will be. There's probably more we can do, and just like that. But in my opinion, it should be automatic, and like you shouldn't even really be thinking about it. It should just happen. Like I'm not a fan of just like, oh, turn off all the effects. Like I'm just, it's kind of lame to me.
Fair enough. Disenchanting flasks for quality. They're one of the things you can't salvage in the game currently in order to get like the quality baubles back that you'll be able to do on flasks.
Right.
Is this intended?
Is there really any reason why we shouldn't do that? I know you were like, oh, it's because it doesn't thematically fit with a hammer on a bench. Just smash the glass.
I mean, I think that's why it is, but like, I have nothing against adding it.
Yeah. We can probably change that, right? Like
I think it was more like, let's do something interesting for flask salvaging and crafting later and save that, but we can add it for now.
We should just add it. I have no problem adding it.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we should probably nerf the drop rate of flask slightly. High levels. That's just a random note that I was thinking about yesterday as I was picking up tons of flasks. Random side note, but
We've almost got all of them. Checkpoints and maps.
Yeah. Salvaging
in order
flasks.
to backtrack
Nice.
maps. How you feel about that?
So not for resurrecting purposes,
just
for fast
just for fast travel.
purposes.
It's not a terrible idea. I'd have to think a little bit about how we would position those. I'm not against it necessarily. I guess the feeling is that there's not so many like objectives in maps in the same way.
When you do those linear maps
Yeah,
and you
yeah.
missed a rare monster, you want to go play something else for a while.
You're right. But, so yeah, we should probably do something about this, but I don't have an exact understanding of what we'd need to do perfectly.
Sure.
Yeah.
On the table, however. Okay. Being able to see gems without cutting. Currently, like you got to cut the gem to look at the list of skills.
I mean, I don't really have anything against it, but where the hell does the option go? I'll think about that. I'm not really against that.
Yeah.
Maybe on the G button, top, click at all skills.
Yeah, maybe.
Something?
Maybe.
Right.
Maybe.
Gambler in the hideout. We have all the other vendors, but we don't have like a gambler in the hideout. For instance, like Alva
The
normally does
reason
this.
for that, what was there was something very broken at the end, and we quickly turned it off. But I think we just need to fix one thing and then turn it back on.
Okay.
There was something very bad exploitation tier,
Lots
and
of
so
good
we were just like
explanations.
disable. It's like 10 minutes until deployment kind of thing.
4 left,
fix
and
it.
we got through all of them. Okay, so Venom Quest is currently the only one that you can't reselect the rewards. So, for instance, you can reselect like the Titan Dome with the Life Flask or the Charm Duration. You can't select from like Chaos to Attributes or whatever. Any opinions on keeping that permanent, or can we reselect?
I
that
want
as
to add a way to change that, which I know people might be like, well, hold on, then why don't you want to allow a way to change the sentences? And the answer is I don't know. That's just how I feel. But
We'll allow you to change it.
I might feel differently later. But yes, I do want to add a way to change that for sure.
Okay, movement speed on boots.
I don't know.
Any
I
feelings
just
about
want
having
it.
be implicit, or
It's my
basically
game.
movement speed
Make your own
mandatory
game.
on boots, or else you're really slowed down. So, how you guys feel about moving movement speed?
I
to
like
implicit,
this
or do you have any
guy.
feelings on movement speed on boots?
I mean, I don't think it's necessarily a problem to have a mod that's really, really valuable on an item that you definitely want to go for. Like, boots is certainly the case where that's like the most extreme, but I don't necessarily think it's a problem as such. So, you know, like, I personally don't have a problem with it, but I don't know if you feel differently.
I like it.
Yeah.
I like having it. That like, I think it's good.
I mean,
physical on a
like
weapon.
if you added move speed implicitly to boots, would you then be like, okay, well, like IPD on weapons, like you start to get into funny territory in some sense, right? Where like, you know,
Yeah.
So anyway,
Where do you
that's kinda
draw the
how I feel about
line?
it.
Last two, UI customization options. Is that potential?
I mean, you'd have to be more specific.
I think people just want
In
to be
general, no. Like,
Yeah.
if you're looking at like,
Like we're not going to be World of Warcraft like like UI mod type there, but yeah, like if there's something specific, then you're like, I wish we could do this. Then maybe we would think about it. It's just a question of
Sure.
what it
More
is.
of a generic question I was getting. Okay,
Yeah,
last
yeah.
one, boys. State of co-op and body blocking. Body blocking, you're with co-op here.
I think it's
There's something not right about it.
there's
but-
something not
Yeah,
right
it
about it. I
sucks.
agree, but I do think you do need it to make things feel more physical. But there is something not right about it.
It makes you not want to
There
play
shouldn't be,
co-op
considering that players
because
are actually
people body block. You
No,
don't know
because
where
we've-
the guy's
You know
going.
what it is? It's because we changed really, really close to the end of development the size of the player instead of changing the size of all the monsters. And I think that probably results in like a situation. But yeah, but there's something not right about it. But I don't want to just completely remove it. We might end up with a solution where like the size of a player to other players is different than what the size is to other monsters or something like that in order to kind of like ease it. I suspect we'll do something along those lines. Yeah, I'll that is it. It wasn't really on my radar, I have to admit, but we should do something about this. Yes.
And you'll forgive me for asking one last question that I'm curious about myself. In terms of microtransactions coming from PoE1 to PoE2, do we have any cadence or quantity or any information we can give them when we're going to be seeing more of our previous purchases?
Well, the main thing is that by the time we go out of early access, we have to have all of them. As for the like rate at which they come through, I mean, look, we'll try and get as many as we can done in the near future. I honestly like. this is so the rigging team are like busy doing that, and I haven't paid enough attention to them. I need to go catch up with them and ask them, hey, how's that job going that I see you going on to? You know?
It's probably it turned into more work than we initially anticipated for sure. There's like a whole bunch of effects that don't translate one to one, so there's a lot of departments that have to do a lot of work. They are tuning through it. That being said, like, you know, it was certainly more complicated before when we were in that last like several month or 3-4 month like kind of lead up to release, and it was kind of like, okay, we need to have all hands on deck getting certain game content done, and we generally prioritize gameplay over microtransactions when, especially in those kind of moments. And so now it's going to ease up a bit, and we can allocate some resources, a bit more resources there to get more of them ported across. But yeah, it did end up being a little bit more work than we actually anticipated. It's not just like a copy paste job and it's done. Some things have to be like kind of re-authored to actually work in one over the other. Mostly due to like lighting, I suppose, really is what is the big difference.
Yeah, so I don't have an immediate cadence for you, but yeah, we should start getting them coming out, like rolling out relatively soon.
All right, and I think pretty much wraps it. I mean, we're getting spammed about Path of Exile 1's 3.26, but unless you want to talk about, you know...
Bit of a long topic to get into at this point.
Yeah, so I figured I'd just throw it out there, but that's it. Guys, you want to wrap it up?
All right, excellent.
Let's just say thank you for coming. And, you know, it always happens. We say 1.5 hour. It always goes above. We very much appreciate you guys' time. And sorry for going so long. But pleasure having you guys on. Hope you guys enjoyed it. And can't wait for the patch notes. And we'll see you guys very soon then.
Awesome. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
See you later.
I want to say thank you also. Appreciate the opportunity. Thanks for coming on the podcast. Sorry it was 20 minutes extra, but... Thanks for your time.
We don't have a clock in here. You understand? You could have said it was the right amount of time, and we wouldn't know.
Oh man, I missed my last.
We don't know how long it's been.
All right, thank you so much.
All right,
thank you.
Should have taken advantage.
Okay.
All right then. Well,